Hi, so welcome to today's Cabinet meeting to fellow Cabinet members, councillors and members of the public. This meeting is being broadcast live through our own YouTube channel, and as usual, the full reports are available on our website. The following reports, however, contain exempt appendices which refer to information that is commercially sensitive. That's agenda item 23, Bristol Holding Group business plans, and item 24, Bristol Beacon. The following two reports are included under APR 15 as a general exception because they were not listed on the Mayor's forward plan 28 days prior to this meeting. And that is, those are agenda item 25, grant determination for the holiday activities and food programme 2021, and item 26, government funding to implement the domestic abuse bill. And I can confirm that the chair of Avon's Scrutiny Management Board and members of the relevant scrutiny commissions have been notified about these items. So agenda item 2, public forum. And as ever, a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed, and members of the public and councillors who have given notice that they wish to speak will be invited to the meeting at that point. And I will give a reply or ask the relevant cabinet member to respond. A written response will be sent to those who have submitted questions. Public forum statements and questions have been published on our website as a supplement to the agenda items. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. We've had an apology from Steve Pearce, and everyone else is here. So Steve, I hope you're feeling better soon. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Can I ask any cabinet members if they have to declare any interest in relation to today's agenda?
Yeah, Craig? So Marvin, I'm the council appointed, I'm a council appointed trustee on Bristol Beacon, so or for Bristol Media Trustee manage Bristol Beacon. So I will step out of the meeting from that point. It's a non-pecuniary role, and I do it on behalf of the council, but still I will step out for that. Thanks, Craig. Any others? Okay, so just Craig to be noted today. So agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions, long day. We have received the report from the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, and I will now invite Councillor Jeff Gollop to join the meeting and read the statement. Councillor Gollop.
Thank you, Marvin. At the Oslo meeting on the 5th of March, members wanted to refer a number of items to Cabinet. First one was the Bristol Holdings Group business plan. Members felt, and the Goram Homes land disposal. Members felt unable to fully scrutinise the Goram Homes land disposal and business plan items due to insufficient time to consider the published papers. The timing of the availability of Cabinet items has previously been raised. Members affirm their support for the objectives around commitments to new housing, but express concerns over the achievability of the suggested timescales. Members supported the proposed model that aimed to bring long-standing sites into development more quickly, but we do believe further ongoing scrutiny around the item would be welcomed by us and we think could be constructive. The comments made on Bristol Beacon, members were extremely concerned about the additional spend identified, emphasising that the 100% increase in costs was real concern. The hard work of officers in identifying the issues and moving the project forward was recognised and appreciated, so it wasn't criticism in that sense. But members did raise concerns over how the project reached this stage and felt that there were significant lessons to be learned. Consequently, the board suggested that the City Council should establish an inquiry to review what has been discovered. Despite concerns, members reiterated that they were unanimous in their support of proceeding with the project, and that was across all parties. We also wanted to make a comment about the social value review, and this was an example of a task and finish group that was charged with looking at a refresh of the social value policy. And Councillor Steve Clark has drafted, who chaired that group, has drafted a note And he just wants to say that the group started by reconsidering the background and utility to the social value and looked at what had been implemented in other councils. It also reviewed in detail the current policy line by line and made suggestions for amendments. We attempted to set out in the policy how social value as a concept could be applied to areas of decision making within the City Council other than just procurement. We commended the policy that has emerged from the consensual approach and really hope that the City Council will remain at the forefront of this emerging area, which we consider is vital to gathering all the benefits we can gain as a council from our spending decisions. There are a couple of other points as well, if I might. Advertising and sponsorship policy. Members welcome the policy as a good starting point and expressed a desire to see the policy strengthened in future to reflect concerns about current advertisers and sponsors. Additional supplementary questions regarding the policy were raised as part of public forum, which couldn't be addressed at OSM, and it was agreed to refer these to Cabinet, and as such they've been appended to this document. We also wanted to note in respect of the corporate business plan that overview and scrutiny management members took part in a workshop with officers on that plan, and we welcome this proactive engagement with scrutiny. Thank you, Marvin. That's all the comments from scrutiny.
Thank you, Councillor Gollop. So on to agenda item 7, Chair's business. There's a few things I would like to share today. One is just to give you the latest on COVID, and our background rate of COVID continues to fall. 63 new cases per 100,000 people over the last 7 days, down from 95 the previous week. And the case rate was over 500 this time in January. So you can see the rate of drop. As ever, the point we continue to make is that we cannot get prematurely overconfident. 63 is still high. When we were in single digits, we were very concerned about going above 10 and incredibly concerned about going above 20. So we're still on 63. And I think also when you think about the speed at which our background numbers have fallen, we remember back to the speed at which they increased. And so small errors can have large consequences. So it means that we have to continue on with the advice. The vaccine is rolling out, and very successful rollout, and we thank the NHS for that. But we do need to continue to be incredibly cautious, particularly as we continue to unlock our lives, and which by definition brings more risk because we are creating the conditions in which people interact. So caution and care is essential if we're to avoid increasing likelihood of a return to a form of lockdown. The risk remains with us. I would also just say a piece of really good news in the budget that we could scratch out of it. There were many things that disappointed us in the budget and authorities across the country, but for us, there was an announcement of £800,000 for the Western Gateway, and just to catch up on that, Bristol, Cardiff and Newport have been working together for some time, but launched a piece of work to look at what is the true economic footprint on which we as a city are working. How do we really begin to work together effectively for our shared benefit and make sure that our economy has higher profile. And the result of that work led to the launch of the Western Gateway, which is an economic patch stretching from Swindon to Swansea and Gloucester down to North Somerset and Bath and North East Somerset as well. And that Western Gateway now sits alongside the Northern Powerhouse in the Midlands Engine and gives us a profile in government that previously we didn't have. It doesn't solve all our issues, but it gives us a profile and it allows us to talk to government with a much larger economic presence than we previously had. And we do now get mentioned in government papers as a matter of course, in the same way that Northern Powerhouse has and the Midlands Engine has started to as well. So that's very good news that we've launched that. I mean, it is an organisation. I'm not saying that will light any fireworks off at this moment in time, but you've got to get the structures right. We've got to get ourselves organised to make our economic case and begin to drive the jobs recovery we are so desperately going to need coming off the back of this COVID depression. And I finally also feedback on the Citizens Assembly. They've been running over the last few weeks, thanks to Asha and Councillor Paula O'Rourke, who've worked on this. And thank you to all those citizens who participated in the Assembly over the last few weeks, working up recommendations for how we can shape our recovery from COVID to be sustainable, to be inclusive, and to be healthy, to make sure that we don't just build what we had before, but we build something that better meets the needs of a city that wants to flourish in all its fullness. Those recommendations are going to be mapped up against the One City plan. They're going to be mapped up against the thematic boards, our cabinet leads, but also our corporate strategy as well. So we can see what is actually going on against each of their recommendations already. And there were lots of them. I think it was 76 recommendations in total. So thank you for everyone who participated in that. Okay, so let's move on to the main papers now. Agenda item 8, the Bristol Avon flood strategy. And Nicola, you're going to bring this item to us today.
Thanks, Marvin. Really delighted to be bringing this cabinet paper forward today. It's sort of the bringing together of many years' work for our officer team, and much of my 2020 was spent talking about flood risk. Our relationship with the River Avon is pretty complicated. It sort of represents our origins from a kind of heritage perspective. It's one of the biggest risks to our city's resilience today, but it's also a defining feature of our city. And I think in some places it's a real jewel in our crown, but in other areas that there's a lot more work to be done. Our priority has always been and remains to be the protection of Bristol's people's homes, businesses and infrastructure from a major flood event. But as leaders of the city, we can't just look at these issues through a single lens, and there's loads of other challenges that we face as a city, sort of challenges of meeting our growing population, social and physical access requirements, air quality challenges, and obviously, as we know, the list goes on. So the kind of skill of the flood risk, the River Avon flood risk strategy before us today is when it's delivered, it won't just keep our city safe, but it will also enable new areas of our city to grow, and also take that one-off opportunity to open up the river to the city and city's residents and our visitors to also enjoy, sort of unmasking these kind of unloved stretches of the river into some great places, which people hopefully will be completely unaware that they are stood on top of a flood defence. The document today is the first step in this direction. I've really enjoyed working on this project. Despite COVID, we've done a really comprehensive consultation in 2020, and the recommendations in the strategy, and importantly, the discounted options, had some really great responses, and it really got the city talking about kind of our relationship with the river and kind of how we move forward together. It's also worth mentioning the kind of sub-regional nature of this project as well, and the work in partnership both with the Environment Agency but also with North Somerset and Baines equivalents and cabinet leads as well. During 21, our officers will progress with the detailed design and the business case, so the city will start to see some of the detail of these defences come to life. I'll pause there and sort of make way, but it's a really fantastic project, and I'm really delighted to be bringing it here today.
Thank you, Nicola. And we'll come up, I'll raise it again later today, but another example of really grabbing a hold of something and beginning to crack on with something that should have been grappled with and been cracked on with some time ago as well. So thank you for your leadership on this. So we have one statement for public forum, and that's from the Environment Agency. And I'm now going to invite Ron Curtis to join the meeting. Ron.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'm Ron Curtis. I'm the Area Flood and Coast Risk Manager at the Environment Agency. And I'm delighted to be able to ask to speak to you today about the strategy, and delighted to be working with the Council on what is a really important flood risk strategy for Bristol. Yeah, clearly, as a council, you've declared climate emergency and an ecological emergency. So you understand that climate change is happening, the risk is increasing, and Bristol is at risk of tidal and river flooding. And so, it's really important that we put in place the infrastructure to make sure Bristol is protected into the future. And that's what this strategy does, is it puts in place the proposals for long-term investment to make sure that both existing and new development within Bristol is protected into the future. And it's been done in a way that will provide many other benefits for people that live and work in Bristol. The strategy also outlines an adaptive approach. And what that means is there'll be a phase of investment during the 2020s, and then there'll be further investment needed in the future as sea level rises. And that investment can be timed depending on whether sea level happens quicker than currently predicted or a bit slower. So second phase of investment can be timed appropriately. This strategy will also provide essential enabling infrastructure for sustainable growth within Bristol. So really, really important for the economy of Bristol. And in terms of next steps, it's we're committed to working with the council to find the funding necessary to implement the strategy, and we will do all that we can to support the council in making Bristol a thriving, sustainable and climate resilient city into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate that. Can I ask any cabinet members if they'd like to say something about this? Kai?
Thanks, Marvin. Yeah, thanks for bringing the paper to Cabinet, Nicola. I think you've done a really good job here. I just want to say on top of obviously your report that there's obviously a very good opportunity here to improve the walking and cycling elements along the riverbank as well as part of the flood defences, and also increase the kind of sustainability options along the riverbank around planting and the ecological benefits that could come from this as well. So quite clearly flooding is very important, but there's also other benefits that will come with this strategy as well.
Thank you, Kai. Any other cabinet? Okay. Well, I'd just like to, again, also to thank you and the officers for the work on this, Nicola. I would also thank Ron for the approach. And I also am really pleased he talked about funding. I'm actually writing an op-ed piece at the moment about COP, and it talks about the need for money to be on the table by the time we get to COP, because we can have all great examples of best practice, but they've got to be paid for. And local government is not awash with money to do these things. So I think as governments work with us to recognise the challenges we're facing, government departments, including the Environment Agency, have to be making the case to national government that this is actually going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds to get it done, and then have to work with us to make sure that we've got a coherent plan around how that money is going to come in. Plan for the future, not on a year-by-year basis where we're on tenterhooks waiting for the budget to reveal itself to us. So I think there are a number of stages in our relationship that I'm looking forward to working through with the Environment Agency on this front as well. But Nicola, let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. And yeah, just to echo what you said there, I think that's, that today will sort of unlock that much bigger conversation about actually how we do actually plan for the city's future all across the city centre. And so I'm really positive to do that. And so, oh, sorry, there's something different on the screen. Sorry, Marvin, I don't know if... Apologies, I don't know.
There was a flood strategy on the screen there, Nicola. I think it... Can we put it back up? It's on its way, no problem.
No, it's okay. I don't know if it's...
All right, it's on its way now.
Sorry, Marvin, have I broke the system?
Don't worry. There we go.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marvin. And so in and I take the decision that's on the screen in making this decision. I approve the recommendations as set out in this report today. Thanks, Marvin.
Thanks, Nicola. So on to agenda item 9 now, which is the Temple Quarter development update. And Nicola, you're going to introduce this. But if I can just say the significance of this for us, just by way of getting into it. It was just a couple of years ago at MIPIM that we were asked to attend the government, to go to the government tent and talk about what was one of the most exciting regeneration and most significant regeneration opportunities in the UK. And this was it, all around Temple Quarter at St. Philip's Marsh. And some of the praise came back towards us because as an authority or as an administration, we'd at last begun to get our act together to bring this forward. Not least the highly symbolic demolition of the old sorting building just behind Temple Mead that had been an eyesore for 27 years, I think it was, a non-greeting to people coming into Bristol by train. So really pleased that this paper's here and that you can bring us up to speed on the progress that is continually being made. Nicola?
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. Yeah, and I echo that. I'm really pleased to be bringing this here after sort of many years' work, I guess, sometimes behind the scenes, kind of sometimes actually in sort of public consultation in the years that have gone by. I think, as you said, so the sort of Bristol Temple Quarter St Philip's project will represent one of the UK's biggest regenerations. So there's 130 hectares of land in that area that we're talking about. And over the next 25 years, I guess the opportunity we have is to build up to 10,000 new homes and also create 22,000 new jobs and also bring an extra 1.6 billion into the city's economy. So even though this, I guess, transformation of this kind sometimes can feel really kind of long-winded, but also sometimes there's moments in time when you see things change. And I guess as we're seeing with the train station and the great work that our partners Network Rail are doing at the moment, we're starting to see that change happen on the ground. And so what's in front of us today in this pack really is kind of a vision document to set out our ambition. And we'll continue this year as we go into 2021 now is to start to consult on the wider framework document which we've been put together. So that was jointly commissioned by ourselves, Network Rail, Homes England and WECA to really kind of talk to both our kind of businesses on the ground, our local communities and the wider stakeholders. This is a sort of conversation I think we'll have with many people across the city about kind of our evidence-based proposals and suggestions for that 25-year transition in that part of the city. I think just to kind of break down a few walls around it really, I think when we talk about Temple Quarter, we're sort of really centred on the refurbishment of Bristol Temple Meads train station itself, and then also kind of looking on as almost like a 360 around that station really, both in terms of the future of Temple Gate and the Friary area. And I know there's a few questions about that from a transport perspective coming up in a minute. Obviously, schemes that people will be familiar with, like the University of Bristol's Enterprise Campus, which has been heavily consulted on, and there's quite a lot of development sites around the Silverthorne Lane area and Cattle Market Road that people will be familiar with. But I guess what people are less familiar with is kind of how we're going to actually manage that planning for the St Philip's Marsh area, which is at a much, much earlier stage than what we see for Temple Meads, and much of what's in the vision document, it has been much further progressed. And so we're just starting on that journey really to work with the businesses and surrounding communities and to talk to them about how we manage that transition from a kind of from a place perspective, but also from a skills perspective and around this area that's a really important employment area for the city and actually how that will transition over that sort of 2.5 decades that will follow. For us, I think it's about going back to some guiding principles about the kind of development we want to see and that just transition of those spaces. And so, you know, we do want to actually encourage a whole range of employment and jobs opportunities across that area. We do want to see more city centre living, and so that opportunity for sustainable neighbourhoods, and also for an area that actually has a real open space deficit or a loss of green space, bringing nature back into this space, which has kind of got a beautiful heritage and industrial charm, but actually from an environmental perspective it isn't fantastic at the moment, and we think there's a really good opportunity to bring some of that back into this plan. Obviously we have the River Avon there, which again is plays into a huge dynamic in St Philip's, and so that'll form a big part of this conversation as well, is how do we unlock parts of that river so that people can enjoy that space again in future. Kai talked about it earlier, but the kind of opportunity for walking and cycling for people that live in East or Southeast Bristol, they'll be aware of the fact that obviously access to the station at the moment is really poor from those places. Public transport and walking and cycling opportunities are really threatened by the existing road structure that's there. And so we can see there's all these really great opportunities to join up parts of the city so that they've got kind of a new Temple Mead station that works for them and also works for people visiting. As I said earlier, we're going to go into a detailed public consultation that will run all the way through 2021. And we're already talking to businesses on the ground, and also local interest groups and residents to kind of make sure their voices are heard, and we do this in the right way. So finally, I'll close, but just a massive thank you to all the communities and groups that have already been involved in this work, and to the many, many city stakeholders that are sort of joined us in developing this vision. I'll finish there and take any questions and comments. Thanks, Marvin.
Thank you, Nicola. So we do have a bit of public forum, which is great. We have 2 public forum statements and 4 questions. So I'm going to invite those who have indicated to join the meeting. And the first is Martin Garrett. Seems we might have been a bit of an audio issue with Martin. Just while we're getting Martin on, can we? Oh, here we go. Martin, how are you?
Oh,
hi. You okay?
Yeah, just about. Just
Great.
surviving.
We got you in from internet limbo. Okay. So Martin,
Okay.
you get a minute for your statement. Okay, I'll give you a warning after 50 seconds. All right.
Yes, should be all right. Okay. You're considering the development of Temple Meads. There's a good vision, except for bus users. They'd have a long walk to the platforms. That's unsuitable for modal shift for local journeys and those with mobility problems. That could easily become the reality on the ground. So move the stops closer to the top station entrance, and also Friary is shown only as a spur, unsuitable for services going by on Temple Gate. Consider a through route along Friary and Temple back east, and there are other options. Also, tram and possibly tram train. Access needs to be future-proofed, essential if we're to reach our 2030 goals. Talk to us. That's it. Thank you.
You finished in 53 seconds. That's one of the most concise statements I've ever had. But look, your points are received. We've got that statement, so we'll pick that up and certainly take the challenges on. There's a lot of work to be done. We're looking at the mass transit intersecting with this as well. But thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's have Dave Redgewell joining us now.
Hello.
Hi, Dave.
So I've got 2 questions and a statement on Temple Meads.
Do you want to do your statement first? You've got a minute for the statement, then we'll go to your question.
Yeah, I just want to summarise. Firstly, I'm very pleased with what's going on at Temple Meads, and we've done a lot of work on it on the Transport Board. It's moving in the right direction. We've got Network Rail working with us. We've still got some issues to sort out about the levels and the interchange and how we get to say with people easing out of the station from the various levels that will be on the Friary and around the station itself. But as a whole, provided we can get the government to support us through the Western Gateway Partnership and through the Western Gateway Transport Board, Homes England Network Rail, we're on our way to trying to sort out what I would consider to be one of the worst transport interchanges in the southwest, and probably one of the few in-city stations that Network Rail own that hasn't yet had really a major makeover and is not fit for the 21st century. I know it's a listed building, but we don't run a railway museum. It is a gateway to the southwest and a gateway to city region.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we share the frustrations around Temple Meads, but there's more of that to come. More of the news than there. So let's move on to your questions now, Dave.
Yeah, my first question really is about the eastern entrance. And this is one we've debated with James Freeman, just to put it in context, and Stagecoach, Nick from Stagecoach. And what we're really trying to do there is make sure we got a better entrance to the rear of the station for the students of the university, and making sure we've got good bus access. So we don't necessarily have to turn the buses, maybe to run them under Cattle Market Road Bridge with certain heights of double deckers, but we just want to make sure we've got an access issue there. And I think the issue that's still stuck at the moment is how we get the buses in and out of there, along with the walking and cycling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, Councillor Kaido does an open invite. You can jump in whenever you like from a transport perspective. But I mean, I think, Dave, this is one of the fascinating parts of, I'm going to say St Philip's, but it includes that eastern entrance area, is that because of those bridges, it's an island in its own right. Those bridges are a real kind of limiting factor in terms of how we bring forward the right transport solution and the right infrastructure for that area. I think you're absolutely right. We need to absolutely maximise the use of that eastern entrance. It has to work not just for students, but it unlocks a station basically for active travel, for want of a better phrase, public transport for East and South Bristol. And so the way in which we can make sure that that can be well serviced by public transport is really important. I mean, Kai's on the transport board. He might have sort of more detail to add from a kind of purely transport perspective, but I don't disagree with you, Dave, and I think it is really, really important that that station supports the whole city and not just the university, and so we do need to make sure it's as accessible as possible.
Thank you. I suppose my only follow-up question would be to make sure that whatever we do around there, we get away from the usual Bristol problem of not providing high quality covered walkways between forms of public transport. So people would have to get themselves out in the rain and the dark to get in the evenings to get themselves out. So between.
Dave, can we go? You've got a second question as well?
Yeah, my second question is about the Friary this time, and it's about the interchange there with the public transport, the ferries. And I suppose my question there really is the same. It's about making sure that when we've got different levels, myself using a wheelchair, that it's easy to access the buses, the ferries, or a future light rail station. But the issue there really is about designing it so we've got covered walkways rather than just open elements to the, which obviously don't make the interchange facilities good. So I suppose the question is about designing it in such a way that it's fully covered and is seen as a continuous part of the railway station complex.
I mean, sorry, Dave, I'm just trying to pick through what your actual question is, but I mean, I agree with the sentiment for sure around the kind of the way people use that space in all weathers, kind of all times of day and night. They need to be safe and they need to be well protected. I don't know, Kai, from a sort of perspective, if you want to jump in on that, if that's right, Marvin.
Obviously, a lot of people are thinking about Temple Meads how it is now, but obviously through this transformation process, where the entrances are, what's covered and what's not covered is going to be completely different. I think you've been in some of the meetings, Dave, haven't you? We've made a lot of progress, I think, on the Friary interchange. Because obviously there was some concerns about that just being the destination for a lot of buses, and it wouldn't be great for buses that are free routes to other destinations. But I think we've got a solution there, haven't we, with a sort of a southern part of it on Temple Way. You're right to point out the eastern entrance. I mean, that's still a work in progress, and we're looking at all the options there still about how we can get the best interchange and the highest number of high quality public transport routes going behind the station and along the feeder and those kinds of routes. So that one's definitely a work in progress. But I think when the redevelopment happens, you have to imagine that the passenger shed is going to be completely different, isn't it? It's going to be opened up. That's going to be the new entrance into that side of the station. So I think that probably answers a lot of the points that you're raising.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the progress.
Dave, I need to, just for the managing the meeting, just to make a distinction between conversation and questions. So you've got a couple of two supplementaries you can ask.
I suppose my supplementary would be, it's one only really, and that is, does the plan take account of the light rail project or the mass transit project, which I'm so very keen to deliver for Bristol City region and Bath City region?
Yes is the short answer, Dave, but I mean, we can take that on as we go into that more detailed design. But it is really, really important that obviously at the heart of this is the way people get around across the city, and so including the mass transit into that consideration is really important to future-proof the kind of vision for this area. But we can talk about that outside of this meeting if you.
And with the transport board as well, Dave. Do you have another supplementary?
My other supplementary is about making sure that we get support. I know we've got support from WECA, just making sure that we have support from the Western Gateway Transport Board and from the Western Partnership. It's such a big scheme. We need to be regionally identified.
I mean, I agree with you, Dave, and I think that's a big part of the work that Marvin is doing across the sort of Western Gateway and the discussions. As I say, it's one of the UK's largest regen projects. It's kind of we're waving a giant flag really for the future of Temple Meads to anyone that will listen, and that includes government and our partners across the city and sort of the regional mayors as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Dave. As ever, we do welcome your statements and questions because they offer a challenge and a genuine expertise that we can incorporate into our transport thinking. So thank you for that. Next up, we've a question from Eileen Means.
Hello, am I through?
Hello, you're through, Eileen.
Oh, thanks, Marvin. And thank you for, I'm sorry, it's coming up as okay here. Yeah, you used the phrase grab a hold in relation to flood defences earlier. And you know, Mr. Mayor, that when I have a cause, I'm like a terrier with a bone. So I'm getting in the vision with regard to safety here, because evidence has shown, and I refer to Grenfell in my question that you've all read, but evidence has shown that once you start developing a look good new developments, appearance seems to count for everything, and safety has been overlooked. I'd say since most houses were thatched, they were built too close together, and that's why London burnt down. So I'm being a little bit cynical, but I'm not at all cynical, because I'd like the safety of occupants, whether residents or in offices, to be paramount at each stage from now. That's why I'm asking this question, in the vision, right through to the detailed specifications and contracts that are let, so that we don't experience not only in Temple Meads and thereabout, but the whole of the Temple Quarter development and St Phillips, because it's a massive, as you rightly state, massive area for development. So let's not overlook safety, as has been done very recently in many blocks of flats here in Bristol.
All right, Eddie. So Nicola and Thangam actually hosted an event on cladding just within the last couple of weeks, wasn't it? Nicola as well, looking at the standards and safety standards.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. I mean, Eileen, obviously you were aware of all the work.
I was there, yeah.
I think to answer your question, yes, I think obviously, the relationship with our fire team, our building regulations team and our regen team is really close. And of course, absolutely imperative to us that we are building the right sorts of buildings for the city. So I'll leave it there. I mean, I appreciate you coming along today. I think keeping cladding and EWS1 on the radar is really, really important. And it is a good flag around the way in which the language we use and the kind of, when we talk about a good growth and safe homes, what it is that we are talking about. And so I think, Eileen, thank you for raising it today, because I think it's a pertinent point to make.
Yes, you can just count on it in the future. I expected a yes. I don't have a second. I just wanted reassurance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, Marvin's fine, but we can keep talking. Anyway, thank you very much, Eileen.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for this item. Can I ask any cabinet if they had anything to contribute? Okay, great. So as I said at the beginning,
Marvin. Yeah, sorry, it's After. So I just wanted to thank Nicola and the officers for all their hard work, and just wanted to say, just echo what Nicola was actually saying, that Temple Quarter's owned it. This is the largest economic regeneration projects of its kind in any of the core cities. And with the work that Network Rail is actually undertaking to improve their infrastructure and improvements there, massive opportunities for the city. Eventually, we'll have, I think, in the region of about 23 million passengers per year. So levels that actually, Bristol as a regional capital absolutely deserve. But also a massive opportunity, as we emerge from COVID. I think massive opportunity in terms of looking at the opportunities for the creative sector, high-tech sector, especially in terms of low carbon industries, to to come and fulfil their promises and help us decarbonise in the city. And also just a reassurance that we are engaging with those traditional businesses there, the traditional manufacturing businesses. We're also talking to the local communities as well, and we're having conversations with the local automotive ecosystem there and the whole supply chains in terms of how we can help them adjust and look at the opportunities with especially with electric vehicles, charging points and everything. So those discussions are actually taking place, and it's something that we're saying to any other local businesses that if you do want to get in touch, please come and speak to us.
Thanks very much, Afzal. Okay, and thank you for that round off there about the sheer scale of the economic opportunity that presents itself to us. Nicola, let me hand back to you. Actually, this is my decision, I think. Actually, you brought the paper, but this one's with me. So I want to thank everyone for their comments. And I'm now going to take the decision, which is displayed on the screen. So in making this decision, I have taken into account the Equalities Impact Assessment, and I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicola, and all the officer team for leadership on this. Agenda item 10, Imperial Apartments, Phase 2. And Helen, you're bringing this item.
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Marvin. Members and Cabinet will remember Councillor Paul Smith bringing a paper about Phase 1 of Imperial Apartments back in September. So the decision that we're being asked to make today is just as sort of complicated and as difficult as it was then, and he set that out for us. Imperial Apartments is a former office accommodation at Parkview campus, which is, as many of us will know it. It's been converted into a residential apartment block by Carradon Property Group, which means there are now 466 units of accommodation on the site. And that's a mix of studios and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. We all know that Bristol's got a severe lack of housing and a visible homelessness issue. 10 years of austerity, COVID-19, and the increase in poverty that it's starting to bite means that homelessness is going to continue to be a key challenge for us in the short and the medium term. So whilst we continue to have a wary approach to Imperial Apartments and to the management of the site, we are recommending that we negotiate to take on a further 100 apartments at the development. The belief is, frankly, that it's better for tenants and for the community, for Bristol City Council to have a close relationship with the complex so that we're on hand to support tenants in their needs and the establishment of their tenancies. In order to give the community the best possible opportunity to thrive and for residents to make a success of their new accommodation, we've also factored in, as you'll see in the papers, a number of additional resources to support residents. These include a letting negotiator to facilitate the nomination of tenants and ensure that the match between the property and the resident is the right one. A welfare rights advice worker to help residents manage their finances, benefits, entitlements, and to navigate the system, and also a security officer to maintain the safety of the block. And we're also allocating a small fund to help tenants get started in their new homes. So that will include potentially a contribution to furniture and or appliances. And this has proven to be a really successful and core offer to residents in Phase 1 of Imperial Apartments. It's also really important to note that all of those nominated for a tenancy in Phase 2 will be people who are able to live independently and without support. So we're, as part of our negotiations with Carradon, we're asking them to adopt the same principle with the remaining units so as to ensure that the community is safe and stable for all who live there. Should the negotiations be successful with Carradon, Bristol City Council will be nominating a mix of tenants from emergency or temporary accommodation, people who are ready to move on from supported accommodation, and those from the housing register as well. And I just want to highlight really that this decision shines really a light once again on the complexities of our housing challenges here in Bristol. We've had a really stark decision to make today, which is essentially we need more homes. We need space for people to move on from temporary and emergency accommodation, and there's a severe shortage of that. And so although this isn't an ideal solution, and it's not one that I don't think any of us would have taken as a first choice, it is essential that we are able to take up this offer, and that we are able to work as closely with the management of the complex as possible to try and create the best possible environment for people that we place in the housing. So I'd really like to thank the officers who've been involved in this really complex and really demanding piece of work, especially Paul Sylvester and Louise Mines, and they, I know, are grappling daily with the challenges of homelessness, and all they try and do is just to keep people safe wherever possible. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Marvin.
Thank you, Helen. So on this item, I think we've had nothing. No statements or questions from councillors, which, when you think about the significance of the issue for us, is slightly disappointing. But nonetheless, can I offer it to any cabinet members as to if anyone wanted to comment on this item?
I need to briefly thank Helen for leading on what has been a pretty difficult, complicated situation. So just thanks for sticking with it, Helen.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Helen. I mean, the point you made about the complexity and difficult decisions, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you've got to take the best that's available to you, when that's not necessarily the best you would have wanted in an ideal world. Is one that should land with us in the complexity of a modern city. But let me hand back to you now, Helen, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. Thanks, Craig. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendation as set out in this report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Helen. So let's move on to agenda item 11 now. Goram Homes land disposal. This one's with me. So we set up Goram Homes in 2018 as part of our wider commitment and vision to just reconfigure the council as a delivery-focused organisation that can make the most of our assets and expertise and bring forward the homes the city needs at the pace we need to bring them forward. So Goram have shown their ability to progress delivery of homes on important sites, with planning applications for homes at Romney House and on the Baltic Wharf caravan site to deliver more than 400 new homes. And this paper identifies a pipeline of further sites which, subject to due diligence, public engagement and planning, we can dispose to Goram Homes to support their plan to deliver 2,500 homes by 2025. So this is our company, our own company, coming forward, getting homes built for Bristol people. The pipeline's not fixed, and any decisions on disposal of land will be made on a case-by-case basis. And Cabinet will receive annual updates on the pipeline of sites and any amendments. So really pleased, again, just another announcement of things happening within the city. We've received 5 public forum questions on this item. I'm going to invite them indicated a wish to speak to join the meeting. The first is Ollie Fortune.
Hello.
Hello. No camera, but we've got your audio, so you can just proceed, Ollie.
That's my camera. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi. So you just said something about needing to build. I didn't catch what you said, but you made a point about needing to build homes, but one of the aims in the agenda item sort of contradicts what you said. You said that we need to build as many homes as possible. My first question is, why are you only aiming to build 2,500 homes by 2025 when, as I've said at previous meetings, there are 13,000 households waiting to be housed? I mean, that doesn't fill the demand. It doesn't meet the rate. I think you made a comment about needing to meet the rate or something of the need. That aim doesn't meet the need. So why are you only aiming to build 2,500 by 2025?
Because that's what, through Goram alone, and there'll be other housing delivery going on through other channels, but that's what we believe is possible at this moment in time through Goram. If we could build more, we would. But you know, the scale of need has been building up for decades. You know, it's not possible for us to turn around and meet that need in just a few years after decades of build up, and certainly with a company that is just over 2 years old. So we go as quickly as we can, and that's what we think is realistic.
Okay, can I ask my supplementary question?
Please do, yeah.
Right, so with a couple of years ago, we were told that the borrowing cap had been lifted. It isn't something I really fully understand. I think it's deliberately misleading, because I know it doesn't mean that you can just borrow as much as you like. I think it's relating to the housing revenue account. I think the larger that account is, the more you can borrow. Is Bristol City Council currently borrowing the maximum it can borrow to build new council housing specifically, not just affordable, which again is meaningless to me? Is Bristol City Council borrowing as much as it can to build as much council housing as possible?
Well, Craig will come in here, but I'd say we're doing all that we can do within the realm of being financially responsible for the organisation. But Craig?
Yeah, so I mean, so you're right, Ollie. So the rules will change. So effectively, you can borrow against as much income as you think you've got coming in the future. Basically, you know, the same as your own personal mortgage, I guess. Obviously, what you need to do with that money, though, is not just build council houses. You also need to continue to maintain those existing stock that you've got and the tenants who live in them. So you need to use it to fund repairs and so on. You also need to use it to fund energy efficiency measures and all of those aspects. So we are at this moment in time working through a 30-year plan for the housing revenue account, which will include us borrowing as much as we can within, you know, some risk tolerances to enable us to do those three key things, which is maintain and improve the existing stock, build more council houses, and then green, you know, make them more energy efficient and so on.
Do you have a second
question? So we're working through it at the moment, but yes, we will be effectively.
Second question, Ollie.
So my second question, as I said at the beginning of the question, it may surprise you that I voted for you in 2016, but I did. And to be honest, there isn't really much competition. It's not really the word I want to use, but there isn't really. There's very little difference, I think, among all of the candidates. I don't really feel that anyone inspires me, to be perfectly honest with you. But why should I believe that you'll deliver 2,500 homes and vote for you again this year to be mayor, when, you know, quite frankly, you're on record as not having built the 2,000 homes that you promised back in 2016? Why should I believe you again after I've been misled once already?
So I would just suggest being careful with the words. First off, your vote is up to you, always, as you would say as well. And I think my point going into any election or any kind of popularity contest that, you know, elections might be, you know, it's just this is the offer, this is what we've done, and then you have to make your judgments on that yourself, and that's perfectly within your right and your responsibility. We did actually deliver the 2,000. It's the affordable that didn't come through, and there are, again, it's up to you to make a judgment on whether we had the right aims, whether we had the right priorities, and whether we did everything in our power to deliver. But clearly, we've been hit by two big factors that have impacted on the industry. One being Brexit, and the other being COVID, that's hit construction more widely. But I mean, I would say in terms of our house building, irrespective of what we're saying, there are people living in houses today that wouldn't have been living in houses if we hadn't been in the administration. There are cranes up all over the city. There have been phenomenal schemes coming through, really innovative, be they the Z-Pods above St. George's car park, the Bok Clock coming through on Airport Road, Bonington Walk, Bio winning a prize for its being in tune with biodiversity and nature, and Hengrove as well, bringing over 1,400 homes through, you know, on a site that's been, you know, identified for housing for over 20 years. So in many ways, I don't think we've left anything in the bank in terms of putting resource into getting homes built, and we've got a national reputation for it now. So you know,
that's what I would say, but obviously it's up to you to make that judgment. Did you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, I did. And before my supplementary, I would like to say, when I'm not actually just talking about myself, it's probably a question that lots of people in Bristol ahead of the election are asking themselves, because we're influenced by what we read in the media, and I've seen several headlines that suggest that the target hasn't been met. That's what I'm going by. My supplementary question is about just the general sustainability of Goram homes. I mean, Bristol Energy, as we all know, it was bailed out and eventually went, well, I don't know how, I think it was sold. Is Goram homes, is this the best way of delivering housing for the people of Bristol? Is this the best value for money option? And also, how safe is Goram homes? I mean, based on what happened to Bristol Energy, is this really the best value for money and the safest way of delivering homes?
Okay. So I'd say we have to be very careful of conflating Goram homes and Bristol Energy. One of the points that we've made repeatedly is that the biggest mistake in Bristol Energy was a local authority going into the energy business in the first instance. This is the housing business. It's not the energy business. There's no track record of expertise in a local authority in dealing in the energy business, a very volatile, carnivorous market to be operating in. Housing, we do have expertise, we do have history, and it's a local market in which we're better tuned to be able to operate in. And secondly, it is different tools are good at delivering housing in different contexts at different times. This is going to be the best tool available to us in certain contexts. In other times, other tools will be a better form of delivering houses. So I'm just saying it's one of a number of tools we'll have to deliver houses. And that's what we set out to do, open up all possible channels we can within the local authority, within the city, to make sure that we're getting houses built and we don't have unnecessary bottlenecks holding up the delivery of homes. Okay. And you can chase up more like that if you'd like with more questions outside. Although I think you do have a supplementary to that, have I?
Yeah, I think I've got.
Okay, yeah, go ahead with your supplementary, Ollie. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's say. I mean, I want to believe you, Marvin. I don't come on here to score political points. I've got no agenda. I'm just a voter. I don't feel particularly inspired. I do feel that words come I think that's a gift you have. You're very gifted with words. They come to you very easily. But to be quite frank, I don't believe that they're always followed through.
I just get what your question is, Ollie.
I don't have any further questions, but
okay.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. Well, you have to make your judgment, and that's yours. We say what we say, we do what we do, and then people make a judgment. All right. But thanks for your time. Okay, so the next question is coming from Jill Kirk, Councillor Kirk.
Hello, good afternoon, Marvin, and hello, Cabinet. I asked this question actually because one of the first Goram partnership deliveries is in Lockleys on the Romney site. So obviously we've paid a lot of attention to it. And I thought it's a good time to ask you a little bit more about community building, because as well as land disposal, of course, we have to think about community building so that provision of community amenities keeps up with housing delivery. And I think one of the key points is how we blend these new housing developments with established communities. And we obviously up in Lockleys, we've found that the designs of the Romney House site look to me as if they are really going to enhance placemaking and build something of a bridge between the two existing communities of Lockleys and Chiswick. So I think there's real potential for a much wider community build there. And my question really to you, Marvin, is whether this and future Goram partnerships will uphold the same commitment to sustainable placemaking as you are doing in the Romney House.
Absolutely. So from 2016, like when we were working on housing policy from 2015, 2016, the point we were making was that it's not just about units, it's not just about numbers, this is about building balanced communities, mixed tenures where people have human relationships.
And I've actually just been working on the Archbishop of Canterbury's Housing Commission. We've just published a report. Bishop Graham Tomlin, who's the Bishop of Kensington, has Grenfell Tower in his patch, actually wrote a really interesting kind of theology of housing, which doesn't have to be super theological. It's common sense, good social policy, that housing is not just about having a unit that you can go be isolated within, but it's a place to be hospitable, to build human relationships, to live in community. And I think it will come through in a city gathering on Friday. That if there's something that we've learned from COVID, it's that building good quality, supporting the development of good, strong communities is one of the most sure and important sources of community resilience in the face of economic, social, health, environmental shocks. So certainly we'll build it, we'll be prioritizing. The development itself was really informed by a significant amount of local consultation. You were a part of that, and informed by local community development strategies as well. I'd also say that we've talked about a justice in production as well. And Goram Homes have a target of spending 75% of construction costs with local businesses to create local jobs and support the local economy. Again, building economic inclusion and, I would say, local ownership into the developments that come on. Taking Eileen's point as well, housing at the higher standards. And clearly we want to build, one of the points I've made repeatedly, the kind of homes we build and the way we build them will be one of the biggest determinants of the planetary impact of that we have as we seek to deal with our existing housing crisis, but deal with a growing population as well. And so building to the highest possible standards on sustainability and efficiency deals with the planet, but also helps us tackle fuel and food poverty. I mean, you as a medic professional as well will again know about the importance of housing as a social policy tool with all those wider dynamics that we talked about there. So yeah, we're committed, Jill. It's not easy, but we're there.
Sure. Thanks. Really appreciate that, Marvin. Thank you.
Did you had a second question as well, Jill?
No, that's it really. But thanks for your answer. Appreciate it.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, I think we have a question from Anthony Negus now. Is that right, Councillor Negus? Councillor Negus, you're on screen and you're ready to go.
Thank you, Marvin. Can I have your answer to my question in that case, please?
Would you like to just start to, because we've been taking questions, would you like to just explain what your question was?
Okay, this is a very important decision. It's something I tried to do in 2010, 11, and I'm supportive of this, but it's very important this decision is made with the right information. And the information presented to Cabinet is not the full information, and it doesn't include one of the most important things of all, which is some of the cost information. Can you tell me how you expect the Cabinet to make that important decision in the absence of that information?
Well, I mean, I will say, as I understand, this has already been called in, and one of an avalanche of meetings that have been called recently, which, you know, I guess is what we do in the organisation as a default, go to more and more meetings that don't look at delivery. But it was called in and didn't go anywhere. But the point is that this is a local authority owned company. And what we have with this model of governance at the moment, dare I say the mayoral model that I know you're opposed to, is actually genuine political leadership, with the Cabinet having genuine political leadership. As opposed to the model we used to have with a constant turnover of political leadership and no one actually running things while the officers run things. So I think setting up a company that's focused on delivery under our political direction with a strong Cabinet actually does serves the city and meets the requirements that we have at this time.
And the answer, please.
That was my answer.
Well,
you may not like it, but it was my answer.
Well, it wasn't an answer. It's not a case of liking it or not.
Okay.
I
What's your
won't-
supplementary, Councillor Eagers?
My supplementary is, and I'm very sad that you've brought in the politics here, because I wanted to make this a very apolitical thing, because I've already said that I'm in support of this in principle. This is the way we've got to go forward. My concern is that any grand plan like this will always falter the first contact with real life and the commercial world out there. My concern is that we have enough resource, enough expertise, enough solid capability of working with alongside people who are very, very strong. I know about this, it's my background, very, very strong in this sort of field. I want this to work, but we can't possibly have another failure like the Bristol Energy Company, because we weren't set up properly to deal with the real world. Can you assure me that we have that capability?
So in a number of things. First off, I mean, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole here, but I am just going to reference it. Having come in as a new person to electoral politics, I'm constantly on the receiving end of speeches of really grizzled councillors, people who've been in councillor for a long time, saying they're not being political. And this is a ferociously political organisation. It doesn't matter how many bows and people dress it up. There's grandstanding, there's hyperbole, and dare I say, Councillor Negus, your party's one of the most guilty purveyors of this brand of. Can I just finish my point? Leadership. I'm glad you talk about Bristol Energy and actually point to the setup of Bristol Energy as being the problem, because that has been the problem. It was what was set up through 2015 and in the early part of 16 that we then inherited was a locomotive that was on the tracks and going, that we then had to try and make work for Bristol. So I do appreciate the acknowledgement that it was in the wrongful setting up of that company and everything around it, that the future problems that we inherited and had to try and solve were sown. So I do appreciate that. But I do go back. We do have the expertise. I mean, Craig and the team here and the new management senior exec team we've brought in to this organisation, well overdue, is excellent. Done incredibly. We've brought in genuine development expertise. We've got much more experience as an authority as well, because officers are now actually experienced of getting things done. The cranes are up, the deals are being negotiated, so there's a lot more lived experience of that now, and that has, I think, put us in good stead. No doubt, and I'm not going to pretend, this is a wildly unpredictable world. Much of what we do is going to depend, we're going to be dependent on national policy as well, changes to planning and national funding as well. So there are going to be many unforeseen challenges down the road that we're going to have to overcome. But I think we've done everything possible to focus the organisation and this company on delivery of the homes that people need. And we've got great people in to do it. And I think it puts us in a really good position. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we can pick up outside of cabinet as well, Councillor Negus.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so can I ask any cabinet members if they would like to comment on this item?
Yeah, can I only to say from the company's perspective, it's great to see this come through. Obviously, there's been just having a future view and a pipeline has been something that Goram's been really after for some time now, and having it come together with the business plan at the same meeting just gives that security and that vision for the future. So just thanks.
Thank you, Nicola.
And just from my perspective, I think particularly when we look at those 6 or 7 areas of growth and regeneration, you'll often hear us talk about the fact that, where we own the land, we have greater influence in the planning system. The planning system has some teeth, but where you're the landowner, it can really kind of add that value and get the outcomes that we're looking for. So a combination of that sort of regen thinking, and where we also have Goram homes involved, it makes me very positive about the future of some of those locations. And so I'm really looking forward to, I'm so glad Goram are going to have that certainty, and now we can look forward to cracking on with those sites.
Thank you. Okay, so let
Marvin?
me...
So I've had my hand up as well. Yeah, so I just wanted to invite Ollie to come and join me sometime, come and speak to some of the residents on Whitehall Road. We've got 14 affordable homes there. Come speak to those residents, and he can find out a bit more about what it means to them to actually move into those properties. For them, it felt like an absolute godsend. So every single property that we do have is a home for not only individuals but for families, and it strengthens communities. So Ollie, please come and join me sometime and come and speak to those residents, and they'll tell you what every single home means that we're building in the city.
Yeah, well, it's a good point, actually. So I've had that pleasure myself as one of the highlights of my job to go and visit families and individuals who have moved into homes that we've been able to happen, and it makes a difference. Right? Every coming from a public health background, every indicator of their life goes in the right direction. Okay, so thank you all. I'm now going to take the decision, which will be displayed on the screen. So in making this decision, I've taken into account the Equalities Impact Relevance Check, and I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Okay, so on to agenda item 12, future commitment of Bristol City Council to the UK Government Resettlement Scheme. Councillor Helen Holland, you're introducing this item.
Thanks very much, Marvin. And I want to show a video. Some of you have seen this, but it never fails to move us. And I think it probably speaks for itself. So if that can be.
ما بيسوى لابني لأنه ابني بيعمل غسيل كلى وعنده فشل كلوي. أنا اسمي ناريمان وهي عائلتي ونحن من سوريا.
The VPRS is a response from people in this country and the UK government to the Syrian crisis, which is the biggest humanitarian crisis since the Second World War.
ما كنا نقدر نحصل على العلاج لابني وهون الحمد لله علاج ابني مجان. لو ما اجينا لهون وصلنا لهون لابني كان مات هنيك.
People here in Bristol formed a little welcome committee. We spoke to the City Council and we asked them to respond by opting in to the government's pledge to resettle 20,000 people who are fleeing danger.
The idea of resettlement is that everyone has the right to a safe home and a safe beginning of life. And so what we do here is we start by giving people the first thing, which is a safe place to live. We find homes that we rent from private landlords. We refurbish them and we make a house into a home ready for someone to come and start a new life.
My name is Khalid. This is some of my family. We are from Syria. الحرب خلتنا نطلع من سوريا بعد ما خسرنا كل شيء ما بقي عندنا غير أرواحنا طلعنا بأرواحنا لحتى نأمن عليها. أنا جيت لهالمدينة عم بحلم بالأمان إلي ولأسرتي وأنا وجدته الحمد لله في هالبلد هاي.
There are a wide range of reasons as to why people are selected for this scheme. Sometimes it's because the children have needs, medical needs. Sometimes it's because the parents have medical needs. There's probably about 7 people who might not still be here if they hadn't been resettled here in Bristol.
My name is Abu Zar and this is my family and we are from Sudan.
We lived in Egypt before coming to UK. It was very challenging and very hard to take our kid to hospitals because he have a spinal cord injury related to accident which happened in Egypt.
My name is Ali and me and my family are coming from Iraq.
My name is Shayma. This is my son and we live in Bristol. It was really difficult. I would try to understand, I would try to read and understand what people were saying around me, but I had no support.
We are in Bristol for 6 months. The nurse, doctors, everyone's very lovely and we get access easily to what we need.
Here in Bristol, I'm meeting people who are able to teach me sign language and I'm able to understand. So I've got a house here, I've got support from a husband, a doctor, my son's able to go to school.
In UK, I feel like whatever the result of his treatment, he will have the opportunity to live normal life.
Fairfield is a diverse school which represents Bristol's multicultural community. My students, mainly they are refugees, they have a lot of motivation themselves to learn and to improve their education. They are really good kids, dedicated ones, wanted to be something in the future.
My name is Mohammed Al Sayed. I'm originally from Syria. In the war, we couldn't go to school. Some schools are destroyed. I moved here with VPRS, and I got lots of help of the school and of the council to continue my education and my dream, because I want to be a successful person.
I'm looking forward to see them qualified people with good jobs and build their life successfully.
Hello, my name is Ala. This is my family. We are from Syria. هلا بالنسبة لي كانت يعني شوي صعبة لأنه لغتي شوي قليلة. قدرت أخذها من ثاني مرة تقريبا. عم بدي أقدم العملي وبعد منها بدي أدور على بصراحة على شغل.
I work in customer service for Tesco. My name is Ali. I'm from Syria. It was important for me to find a job because I want to support myself, get more experience here in this country.
أنا بروح على منظمة القلب البريطانية. أول شغلة حسن لغتي الإنجليزية، ثاني شيء ساعد قدر ما فيني.
بتمنى عن أقرب وقت حصل لاقي وظيفة مناسبة لأقدر أكون عنصر فعال بالمجتمع.
I want to go to uni and study coaching or physiotherapy. That's going to help me a lot in the future.
بتأمل للمستقبل إنه أولادي تكمل تعليمها وأنا أستطيع إني أشتغل وأرجع لعملي لمهنتي وإنه نقدم شيء لهالبلد هاي مثل ما هي قدمت لنا.
We wish to just start our own business, have our own work, be able to support our kid and feel like, yes, we are really useful people and we can do it.
أمنياتي للمستقبل بتمنى ابني يكون كتير منيح يطيب. أمنيتي إنه أنا وجوزي نلاقي شغل نساهم بهالبلد اللي ساعدتنا إلنا.
I would love to see Bristol continuing to play its part in the resettlement of people who are fleeing danger and persecution. I think as a city we have a moral duty to do that, and we're in a position where we can make a real difference in people's lives.
This resettlement could never happen without the volunteers and the project board, and without them we couldn't ever have made this a success. They worked tirelessly, they put their whole heart into this, into supporting every family.
We just want to say thank you genuinely to all these people who've taken time to think about the global crisis and the fact that 21 million people are displaced from their own countries, and that we are all standing up to do our little bit to help and contribute towards alleviating that crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen, you
So
coming
thank
in?
you, colleagues, for taking the time to watch that. And I've seen it numerous occasions, but it never fails to move me. And I just think that anybody watching that film and wondering whether or not we should engage with the government's new scheme, you know, must have something missing inside them. I think it's a fantastic film. And I think the other thing about that film is that huge list of organisations and individuals who help support the scheme. So the VPRS scheme, the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme, that was from Syria, finished. And we had committed to housing 400 people. It was obviously there was a complete hiatus. The film, needless to say, was made before the pandemic. There was a hiatus last year, but nevertheless, we're just 2 people away from meeting that target. 398 people have been rehoused in Bristol. And of course, we want to engage with the new scheme in whatever form that takes. I mean, we know a little bit about it, but we will be moving on with that. So I hope that the film and the report speak for themselves. I'm very happy to bring it to you this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Helen. And we've had one public forum statement and one question on this item. So the statement is Eileen Means.
From Syria, finished, and we had committed. It was obviously there was a complete hiatus. The film, needless.
What's that? Eileen, I think you might need to turn your something off. YouTube, turn your YouTube off, because I think there's a delay. Oh, we lost Eileen. Okay, so we've got a question from Don. So why don't we go to Don's question and then we'll come back to Eileen. And we'll bring Eileen up in the meantime. Is that okay? Hi, Don.
Hi, thanks, Marvin. Afternoon, everyone. Bristol is a city of sanctuary, and this report is very much to be welcomed, although the government's targets for the UK resettlement scheme definitely lack ambition. Could Councillor Holland please explain to us how the community sponsorship scheme works and how Bristol residents can be involved? Thank you.
I can give you a longer answer, but the short one, Don, is that former Prime Minister David Cameron, I think, had seen what had been done in Canada, where over 300,000 people had been adopted by community schemes, and wanted something similar here. And I went, I think it was only about 2015, actually, went to a very good meeting with the Home Office with representatives from the Canadian schemes. And I think the Archbishop of Canterbury was also involved in that. So the community schemes in Bristol, we've got 3, and they're largely supported by faith groups, but not entirely. So one supported by the Clifton Catholic Diocese, one by Westbury Baptist Church, and then a non-denominational scheme in Cotterman and Redland. And the Home Office has to approve those community sponsorship schemes, has to check that they've got sufficient resources, a house, financial and personnel, volunteers to support a family. And doesn't represent a risk, because I think, as we saw in the film, you know, it's beyond imagining what those families have come from, and we need to absolutely make sure that coming here is a huge wrench, but that it needs to be smooth and it needs to work out for the family. So there is lots of support, and obviously if there are other communities who are interested in doing that, then we'd be very interested in hearing from them.
Did you have a supplementary, Don?
Thank you. Just ask what the point of contact is for any individuals or community groups who would be interested, please.
So I'd start with Anne James, refugee Anne James. And this is a good opportunity to also thank Anne and the team, and, as I've said, all the voluntary and community groups that help support refugees and asylum seekers in the city, because we have a very good record, and rightly so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think we've got Eileen back. Eileen, you were causing us all sorts of technical problems there.
Yes, I couldn't get through. It's okay on my side. I was unmuted and everything. And
it's the council's fault.
Anyway, thank you, Marvin. I appreciate that. Right. I just wanted to say how delighted I am with this project and how much it deserves and merits support. The staff are absolutely brilliant throughout. I'm speaking in my former capacity of Vice Chair of ACH, which contributes a lot to this, and also now, obviously, as candidate. What triggered me to write, as I say, was the evening before I submitted this statement. Channel 4 TV showed a clip of very young children in the Yemen. They were going to the rubble that was their former school and trying to teach each other the basics. A 9-year-old blind boy was trying to teach the children. It then showed him being escorted home and being escorted back through the rubble to find his way. Now, we've had a tough time in this city with COVID-19, I know, and a lot of people say to me time and again, why, when we're going through a tough time ourselves, do we admit these people? And I think we should tackle this as a city head on and say we're proud to. These little ones that we've seen in this video are experiencing a much tougher life, and it's heart-wrenching. And the agencies involved in refugee resettlement in our city know many tragic stories like those we were shown. So I just want to publicly thank them for the excellent welcome and support provided to each refugee family. And I would love it, the more we do, the actual better, because these families really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Can we just invite any cabinet members who'd like to comment on this item? Asha?
Thanks, Marvin, and thanks, Helen, for bringing this the report to Cabinet today. And you have you have the whole city's, I think, wholehearted support. And I just wanted to kind of what many of you may not know, back in 2018, on behalf of the city, I publicly pledged our support to Lord Dubs, who you know is a huge campaigner around refugee asylum communities. And we support his pledge and call to action for the Our Turn campaign, which was for the settlement of child refugees. And we pledged to take an allocation of unaccompanied and vulnerable children under any future children at risk scheme. So the fact that the government has now collapsed all of the different various schemes into one, you know, it works for us, because I think, you know, as a city of sanctuary, we are offering people who are fleeing violence and persecution a safe haven, a safe home. And as it says in the report, we were officially recognised as a city of sanctuary in 2011. And I just want to add to the thanks to all of the staff and to all of the incredible organisations who have stepped up to provide support to these families. You know, that the video that was shown, you know, unless you've got a heart of steel, it does really touch you. And back in 2018, I was invited to attend a commemoration of kinder transport, you know, when the children were being shipped out of Germany here to England. And that was extremely moving. And they told the story of those children 75, 80 years ago, bringing it up to date with some of the kind of messages and the stories that we've just seen on the screen. So yeah, big up to Bristol. This is what we do. This is what we're about. And yeah, we should always put our arms around those who are fleeing persecution. So thanks to everybody, and thanks for this.
Thank you. Any other cabinet? Well, I'll just say again, thanks, Helen, for coming through this today. And this is the best of us, isn't it? It's a source of real city pride to be recognised, not city of sanctuary all those years ago, but what we're doing to make it real right here, right now. And I will share, you know, just after being elected, watching Mayoral on a Sunday morning about a refugee crisis and finding a really good response in our team, just phoning up and saying, how many unaccompanied children are we taking in Bristol? And them coming up with a number and saying, we could do more. Can we do more? And they said, well, work out a way of doing more. And just being able to respond. So often we can feel powerless in the face of global crises, but we can respond, and we are within our to the maximum of our ability. So yeah, it's a real source of pride. Thank you, Helen. So let me come back to you
as well, Marvin.
Okay.
I think I got to sort my hand out because yeah, I've had it up a couple of times. So no, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Helen, for all the work that you've done, that Anne James has done, Mohammed Al Sharif, Forward, and the whole team. we are a city of sanctuary, and these people, these individuals, these families, they have fled persecution. We're also a city that has prioritized our implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of them is Goal 16, which is peace and justice, and working with strong institutions such as local authority. And to any members of the Syrian community or those people listening, salam alaikum and marhaba, welcome to Bristol. Syria, for example, is the cradle of civilization, as we know, and actually these individuals bring so much here, and it is our responsibility. And I'm very proud that I live in a city such as Bristol that is doing its utmost to welcome people who have fled persecution. And actually, you tend to find that many of the people that we have helped resettle here are actually children. Many of them have got disabilities as well. They've got special needs, and also just in terms of looking back yesterday with International Women's Day. Many of the people that we've helped resettle are women, and they've faced violence over there. There's been sexual violence against them as well. So they've been through a very traumatic period. So thank you once again to everyone involved in helping them resettle here and helping them, get a better life, but also remembering that they have aspirations. They have very strong aspirations, and they will be contributing and making Bristol even better. Thank you.
Yeah, spot on, Afzal. Thank you very much. So, Helen, let me hand back to you now to take the decision, which I support.
Thanks very much, Marvin. And just to say that we can make that film available so that people can show it to their organisations or just look at it for themselves. So in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the Equalities Impact Assessment in the report. And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Helen. So on to agenda item 13, Cumberland Road Stabilisation Project. And Kai, you'll bring this item.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a hard item to follow, isn't it? The purpose of this report is to give everybody an update on the Cumberland Road Stabilisation Project. I think everybody knows that the wall down there alongside the chocolate path failed back in January 2020. We actually let the contract, and we're obviously on site at the moment, restoring the wall, and obviously it's a firm commitment of the administration to get that piece of work done and the chocolate path reopened. We've had a final forecast assessment through in regards to the capital funding requirements to complete the project, especially around the sort of contingency and risk element that we think is appropriate to keep the project going on a good footing. So the final assessments come back, and there's a shortfall of £2.49 million. So the purpose of the report is to ask for approval for that money. As I said, it is a part of the risk elements to the capital spending, and a number of issues have been identified that have made it clear that element of risk funding is potentially required. So obviously we've got a duty to ensure that we maintain our assets properly, and a duty to make sure that we reopen the chocolate path and restore the wall there on the new cut. So it's quite simple really. It's asking for that amount of money to be approved, and we're due. Actually, the timetable for completion of the work isn't affected at all by this. We're still due to complete by July 2022. So the works are on programme. So over to you, Cabinet. I hope you support this paper.
Thank you, Kai. Can I offer it to any Cabinet members who'd like to speak on this one? Okay. Well, I'll just say that there are a number of, just on this fits into a kind of a pattern of things that we are having to deal with, a number of very large areas of concern, that the physical makeup of Bristol that we are coming to deal with, but it hasn't been dealt with
historically. Again, just really welcome the fact that you grabbed this guy and are bringing it through today. And it's just another one of the kind of challenges we have to take on, keep the city together for the existing population, but also to cope with the wear and tear of a growing population in a world around us that will be changing from climate and with all the additional risks that will come around us for that. So incredibly important. So let me hand back to you to take the decision which I support and which will be displayed on the screen.
Thanks for that, Marvin. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact, relevance check in the report, and in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Kai. So agenda item 14, Floating Harbour and Newcut River Condition Assessment Survey Report. This is with you as well, Kai.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This is another example of a paper where, obviously we're taking our responsibility very seriously as an administration, get my words out, in regards to maintaining our assets. And obviously a very important asset to the city of Bristol is the Newcut, is the harbour. And as you pointed out on the last paper, this is very old infrastructure that we're dealing with, almost around 200 years old, some of the walls along the Newcut. So the purpose of the report is just to give an update on an initial survey that we've had done. So the Harbour Asset Survey has identified 194 structures within the floating harbour, the Newcut and the feeder canal. Of the 194 structures, 68 of them are of some concern, and then 11 of these require further critical structural interventions in the next 2 to 5 years. One of them that's been identified for quite urgent work is the Underfall Yard Sluice Bridge, which isn't too far away from the chocolate path. That will require full replacement in 2022 at an estimated cost of £1 million. £1 million also will be needed within the next 2 years to undertake further critical structural investigations and possible emergency stabilisation for the 10 remaining critical structures. £500,000 will be required immediately to set up monitoring on all the 11 sites that we've identified as critical. And then obviously we plan to deal with the underlying issues over the next 2 to 5 years on those structures. And at the moment, we estimate that probably would cost around £14.35 million to do the, obviously that's a very early figure, to do the work on those 11 critical structures. So it's quite an important paper really in terms of us looking at our harbour assets, the Newcut and the feeder, getting to grips with what the problems are, what needs urgent attention, what can be delayed for another day. So we've, obviously we've identified a number of points around the docks and the Newcut where that critical attention is required. I mean, it's not limited to one location. It is spread evenly out across the harbour asset. So very important piece of work. Obviously, in the long term, maintaining all of that is going to cost a lot more than 14.35 million, but obviously it's very important that we deal with the urgent priorities as quickly as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. So we've had just like the last one, we have no statements or questions on this from councillors, but can I ask any cabinet if they'd like to comment on this item? I think this, for me, Kai, just to say, it just fits into the same camp as the last one. The city needs upkeep, it needs maintenance, it needs servicing, and if you don't do it, it turns up as a crisis and a big cost downstream. This again is taken seriously. It's not glamorous, but it's just part of upkeeping the physical nature of the city. So again, thank you. So let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marvin. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Kai. So we're now on to agenda item 15, advertising and sponsorship policy. And I'm bringing this paper, and this is our first formal advert. This is the first ever formal advertising and sponsorship policy the council has ever developed. So pleased to be able to bring this. And what we've set out to do is encourage, support well-managed advertising and sponsorship arrangements in Bristol. And in developing the policy, we've really worked to live up to the commitments we've made to consider health in all policies, which actually just coming off of the conclusions of the Citizens' Assembly over the weekend, I hope they'll be pleased to hear, because making sure that health impacted on all council policies was one of the recommendations. So a number of key features I'll cite with this approach to advertising and sponsorship. One is, as I said, the health policy lens, and again, Helen and Health and Wellbeing Board hopefully be pleased to hear this. So new restrictions on advertising on council-owned platforms, particularly on quality of foods and drink. And we're restricting alcohol and junk food advertising across the city as well, but allowing companies to substitute them with adverts for healthier products. There's also taking action on gambling. So it's preventing the advertising of gambling platforms except for recognised social lotteries, for example, that are tied to positive social outcomes that we all somewhat rely on in many ways now, and also payday loans alongside existing measures such as preventing the advertising of harmful payday loans, really important for us. So, you know, the aim is for these measures to make Bristol's policy one of the strongest in the country, attempt to lead by example, and you know, we're willing to take the financial risk, and there is risk to us in this, to achieve much greater public health reward that will pay off in other ways anyway for us and the health service and other city partners. So we've now received 3 public forum statements on this one and 5 questions. So I'm going to invite those who wish to speak to join the meeting. And first we have a statement and a petition from Robbie Gillett.
Thank you.
So Robbie, I'm just going to give you notice. I'll give you a minute for your statement, and I'll give you a heads up at 50 seconds. Okay.
Thank you, Marvin. Yes, my name is Robbie Gillett. I'm speaking from Adblock Bristol, and we very much welcome the creation of the new advertising policy covering sites that the council controls as an important first step, and in particular the prohibitions on advertising in parks, junk food advertising and gambling advertising. We thank the Mayor's Office for your reply to our inquiry about introducing similar restrictions on advertising for high carbon products such as SUVs, polluting vehicles, airlines and fossil fuel companies. We note that Amsterdam municipality passed a similar policy recently. We believe that for Bristol, a policy like that would support the ambitions stated in the One City Climate Strategy, which was released in February
50 seconds, Robbie.
Oh, right. I've run out of time, but
I'll give you an extra 30, don't worry. But just you.
Yeah, thanks very much. It would support the ambitions in the One City Climate Strategy to create advertising standards and restrictions to support responsible consumption. So we've set up a petition in the last 3 weeks. It's got 1,000 signatures. And we've set that up to be a supportive public demonstration of introducing further restrictions on advertising for high carbon products. And we've learned that other local authorities are looking to Bristol to see how it advances on this issue. And as it has done before, Bristol City Council has an important opportunity to show progressive national leadership on this issue. Thanks.
Hey, listen, just this once, okay? But yeah, no, appreciate that, and thank you for your petition and your you know, the work you do more widely as well. So much appreciated. Okay, so let's now move on to Don Alexander. Don,
thanks, Marvin.
A minute, Don.
Thank you. There's far too much advertising around the city designed to attract residents in the direction of products which tend to damage their health and well-being. This policy has identified the worst of those and makes a clear statement that the council no longer intends to seek to benefit financially from such advertising. It's a great step forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much for that. Next up, we have Carla Denyer. Can we admit Carla Denyer to the meeting? Are you there, Carla?
I am now.
Okay, so your minute, okay.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing forward this policy, Cabinet. It's great to see the council adopting these rules, which I think will stop adverts on council property from undermining some of the aims of the council's own policies on public health. And particular thanks go to the officers who consulted scrutiny at an early stage in the development, which I think allowed councillors to have meaningful input and really helped us to get a stronger policy overall. However, I would really like to see the council go further in time, in particular to include a ban on ads for high carbon products and services, as Robbie Gillett was saying, and to adopt similar policies in planning so that these rules can in time apply to all corporate outdoor advertising rather than just the ones that the council owns. I note from the report that neither of these have been completely ruled out, so that's very promising, and I just encourage process to be speedy, and I'd like to offer my help if there's anything I can do to support those. Okay. Finally, very quickly, in my written statement, you'll see I've provided a link to a report about the Advertising Standards Agency, which I was involved in helping to produce along with Robbie Gillett and others. And if you've got a moment, I'd recommend having a quick look at the executive summary of that, because it highlights some of the issues with advertising regulation at a national level and really emphasises why Bristol needs to do something carefully.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, thank you for that. So let's move on to the questions, and the first is from Jenny Howard-Coles. Can we invite Jenny into the meeting? Oh, there she is. Okay.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you very much. Yep, Jenny Howard-Coles, local resident and Bristolian. So I've got two questions here. The first one, I welcome the restriction of advertising for junk food and gambling in the advertising policy on the grounds of health. And I hope the next step will be the addition of restrictions around high carbon advertising, which also represents a threat to our health and well-being. But I am concerned that the advertising concession agreement due to be adopted next year will effectively freeze your policies for the next 10 years. So my question is, will the council be able to ensure that the concession is structured in such a way as to allow for restrictions on high carbon advertising to be incorporated into the terms of the agreement at a later date without having to wait 10 years for the concession to expire?
Yeah, we are going to be building flexibility into the concessions we give, but negotiations will happen around each concession. But we want as much flexibility as we need to be able to respond to the needs of a fast changing world. So yeah, there'll be space for those conversations.
Thank you. Can I ask my second question?
Please do, go ahead.
So more broadly speaking, does the council have plans to ensure alignment of advertising policy citywide with other parts of the council's operations, including in particular planning and public health?
Well, we're getting as much alignment as we can across all policies. That's the purpose of the one city approach and the one city plan, to make sure not just us, but all of our city partners are aligned under those shared aims, but recognizing that sometimes it takes a bit of time to move into to that alignment. But elements of the planning infrastructure, that are dealt with as part of the planning policy, and issues flagged up during the development of that policy have been logged so that they can be factored into the ongoing local plan review. So as that process plays itself out, they'll be included in there.
Thank you.
Do you have supplementaries?
I do have one supplementary, if that's okay. So assuming that this new policy will cover all advertisements on council-owned sites, and including sites where the council is a partner in the ownership of the site, such as Bond Street, for example, the council may have difficulty in ensuring compliance with the policy. And would it therefore be possible for the council to publish on a website all the sites they own so that the public can help monitor the sites and report any infringements that we notice?
I'm not, unless there's some technical or otherwise reason that can't happen. I don't see it be an issue. Asha?
Yeah, I think that could easily be resolved through Pinpoint. You know, the online kind of database that that's flagged and everybody has access. I'm sure officers can pinpoint where they are, and you guys can find it. So we'll take that back to officers.
Yeah,
that's okay.
You can take that back, Asha. Will you take that back? Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Did you have another supplementary, Jenny? You had 2 available to you.
Oh no, I think that's covered it. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think we have another question now. This is from John Stansfield, Bristol Animal Rebellion.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Do you want me to fire?
Yeah, just jump
in. Yeah. Okay, right. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is John Stansfield, and I'm here to represent the Bristol branch of Animal Rebellion. It's an organisation campaigning for action to counter the major contribution of animal agriculture to the ongoing climate and ecological extinction crises. We submitted 2 questions to for the Cabinet's attention. The first one was, does the Council believe that it is morally acceptable to promote environmentally destructive products and brands in its public spaces, given their own actions and commitments to combat the climate crisis and the Council's duty of care to its constituents?
Well, I'm always a little bit wary of moral judgments, to be perfectly honest, John. But having said that, we do know there are some priorities, and we set out through both the climate strategy and the ecological strategy, and I would say for our economic recovery strategy, that we need to decarbonize the economy. It's work we're doing actually right now in the lead up to COP as well. And you hopefully will be aware that we've put the Sustainable Development Goals at the heart of our city planning. So getting ourselves into alignment to deliver sustainable development is what we're about. But I would say this is the first time the Council has even had a coherent and a formal policy on advertising. We're into it. We're going to review it, and we'll be on that journey, and we'll refine it and make it more in line with everything we want to do as we go. I would just say, when we are making moral equivalencies, it is part of the realities of a tricky world, in that this does bring us revenue, and some of our revenues are spent on services that we would also consider a moral priority and moral requirement for delivering a just, inclusive city. I mean, just look at the item on the resettlement scheme that we've just looked at just now. So, we go as quick as we can, but we have to do it in the face of lots of other challenges as well.
Okay. Can I now put a second question to you?
Yeah.
Okay. How does the Council plan to carry out their stated commitment in the One City Plan to develop a citywide shared understanding and commitment to responsible consumption, including lower carbon foods?
So again, this is another one where I'm sure we could have a whole evening talking about it, but I'm just very wary of us talking about us telling people what to think as a government. Again, it's a tightrope, so we have to be just a little bit careful. I'd also ask you to visit the One City Plan and just kind of wrestle with it as well, because it's not for what we've said with the One City Plan. It's not for the Council alone to do these things. It's for us to work with the city to make possible behaviour change. So we have to work with our education when we're thinking about responsible consumption. It's the education system, what happens in the home, the workplace, and there's a broader philosophical question as well about what makes life worth living, which has, I recognise, over the last 60, 70 years boiled down to consumption and irresponsible consumption as well. But that's about a broader philosophy of life as well. So we have to be working with our partners on all of those fronts. And advertising policy, though, I would say is only one part of our work. There are areas where we absolutely touch on
responsible living and our relationship to consumption. For example, in our commitment to building personal resilience and good mental health, and finding a sense of self outside of consumption. By its definition, a more coherent sense of self and resilience is non-dependent on consumption. I'd say the History Commission as well. It seems abstract, but actually come into contact with who we are and the fullness of our story takes away from a dependence on consumption to get that sense of validation and who we are. And then there are very concrete areas of action in the Going for Gold on food sustainability and food consumption, climate strategy, and the energy efficiency program in there as well. I just had a couple of final points on that, on responsible consumption. And I think this is where it's tied to economic inclusion. I've heard sometimes, and you didn't do this, but I have heard some activists say, well, we'll just pay a few pennies more. And we have to be careful that in the act of talking about responsible citizenship and what is the morally right thing to do, that we don't end up with a kind of a moral judgment landing on the shoulders of people who cannot afford to buy locally sourced organic produce and who are having to go to the budget buys, for example. So we have to be really careful about that. It can be that the responsible consumption lifestyle is also a function of having a fair bit of disposable income. And also, I would just say it's when we think about advertising, we've got to be careful again. This is not just down to individual behaviors. We cannot get the scale and pace of change we need by adding up individual behaviors. What we need to do is change the systems that underpin city life. And you'll probably be, well, you might be pleased to know that we're doing this work in the lead up to COP26 about how we get to COP with billions of pounds worth of investment available to transform our energy systems, food systems, transport systems, so that whether you care or not, the systems on which your life depends in the cities are decarbonised and pro-biodiversity. So lots of work going on in those areas. But did you have supplementary questions, John?
I do, yes. I'll give you the first one now. We love the fact that Bristol City Council were at the forefront of declaring a climate emergency back in 2019 and have put a lot of effort into creating the One City Plan, which really displays how progressive our city is. So for us, it would be a massive disappointment if they didn't follow through with the aim of a greener city and back this and get backing for this change from the council. If we wait until the policy is next under scrutiny, it may well be too late because of contracts being drawn up in the meantime and so on. Considering all of this, and again reiterating that this is a climate emergency, what are your reasonable grounds for this request not to be added to the policy right now?
So I mean, I would just make one gentle pushback. I don't think this single ask, if it wasn't delivered, would undermine the whole scale approach that we've taken to decarbonising our city and building biodiversity into what we've done. And I think the biodiversity declaration sits alongside the climate emergency declaration as well. I'd always hold those two together. So I don't think that one area necessarily undermines all that incredible work that's going on, across the city. But there are some challenges about how you define this as well that we've bumped into. How do you make it enforceable and definable? And until those questions are resolved, it makes it very difficult to move forward. No one else has done this. And as I said, it's the first time we have formalized a policy on advertising and sponsorship. And, we have to learn as we go, but we will go as fast as we can. But can I just say, John, there's an open invite to you to feed your thoughts and recommendations into the One City Plan, by the way. Each of the thematic boards, including the Environment Board and you might not just look at the Economy Board, have emails if you look at the One City Plan. Please do take the opportunity to feed your thoughts in there so they can be part of the grappling that those boards do with the commitments they put before the city for the next 30 odd years. We welcome that.
Okay, Marvin, that's great. I did actually put an email to every single councillor summarising a lot of the issues around this about a week ago. I've got one more supplementary question. Can I put that to you?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Does the council see our suggested amendment to this policy as having the potential to generate positive publicity for our city, and how, once again, it can be seen to take the lead nationally around the climate emergency?
I mean, it certainly generate publicity, but again, it needs to be, you know, our definitions and how we enforce it would need to be clear. To be honest, you know, we are often asked about being the first and all that, and my point is, the aim isn't to be the first. The aim is just to get good stuff done, and if someone else does it first, then that's fine. We're not in a, it's not a race. Although I take it an emergency, there is a bit of a race to get things done. But we are, you know, I think we are making waves on what we do, particularly around the Sustainable Development Goals being held up by the United Nations and so forth. That we, you know, we'll do our best, you know, and we're going to continue. And I think what I ask you to do is continue to bring the challenge. But can I ask you, the councillors are somewhat distinct from the One City Plan. The One City Plan is about all those institutions, universities, business community, voluntary sector, trade unions. So if you actually pick out the emails for the thematic boards for the One City Plan, there's another discussion that can happen there, and we'd really welcome your thoughts being fed into that discussion. We can get you can we get the information to John? Can we send him the link to the email addresses for the One City boards? We'll send that to you, John. Okay, so you've got the emails to hand.
Thanks very much for your replies, Marvin. Thank you.
Thank you. So the final public speaker is Anna Mears.
Hi, good evening. I'm a resident and fellow Bristolian, and thanks for having me along. I do also have a supplementary question, and I would like an answer to both of my questions in writing, if that's possible.
Okay.
So my first question is, so the council has declared both climate and ecological emergencies, as we've discussed, and it's laid out its ambitions to reach net. Will the council conduct a consultation on high carbon advertising in line with their commitment in the One City climate strategy and as discussed in the report for this agenda item?
I'll just talk to the team about it. I mean, we've got, as a result of legal requirement on so much of what we do, and also and because we are doing things that we do good to talk to people out, we have a lot of consultations going on. And one of the challenges is consultation fatigue amongst the city. And so to the point that people sometimes don't even bother engaging. But also, it also brings obviously stress on the council when we have a lot of priorities. So, and I'm just being frank with you, I'll be up for the conversation about it, but you know, today we've talked about homelessness, refugees. We're going to talk about child hunger in a bit. We talked about building homes for people. We've got a paper on domestic violence. There's lots of things requiring the officers' time. And one of the things I've got to do is work with the cabinet and with Mike, our chief exec, and the team is say, well, how do we deploy officers' time in the face of all those crises? And which consultations do we do? So I'm all up for the conversation, but I think we need to do some more thinking about whether we launch a formal consultation on advertising carbon products in the face of all the other crises that we face. Is that the best use of council resources at this moment in time? That's a question we'd have to struggle with.
Okay, thank you. And then my supplementary question is that since this is a new policy and it will only apply to city council owned sites, will the planning department be reviewing its policy on all advertising developments to take account of Bristol's policies on responding to climate change in the One City Plan, mental and physical health, road safety, visual amenity, and all these things?
I think they'll be doing it right now because the issue is being brought very forcefully by a number of people. So by definition, it will be something that is on the radar. We did talk about it as we were bringing the policy through anyway. But obviously we focused on the health and the gambling because that was something that we knew we could get our hands around and really be firm on. When you get into carbon, it becomes a lot looser and difficult to pin down. So that was part of the decision-making process. But yeah, you know, the team and Nicola's in that area will certainly have this on their minds. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think there's a lot of our questions. Can I ask any cabinet members if they have anything to add? Asha and Kai, Helen.
Yeah, obviously very and very quickly as well. As Marvin said, the policy has been brought specifically to address, kind of gambling and public health, alcohol issues, and I think what was quite significant, because remember back in 2018 we became a sugar smart city. So Bristol, even though it's not intrinsically linked, but we set out our stall about the direction of travel to reduce the use of sugar in the city, and that actually had a huge impact, and we can see it still happening now in terms of supermarkets, shops, cafes, the way in which they display their food, etc. So I think one of the great things about this as well is that even though there is a risk to us losing revenue, I really do believe that it's a worthy risk to take, because it may or may not outweigh the public health costs down the line. So, we welcome the policy. We didn't have one in place. I've listened to what other the speakers have had to say, those who've had statement and questions, and I think just supporting what Marvin has said. We will kind of consider all of these options, and we're considering all of this. As Marvin says, as we speak now, we consider all of these kind of key policy initiatives as we move forward on the city. So, it's about time.
So I had Kai and Helen, and then are you coming in as well, Afsal?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kai, Helen, Afsal.
Yeah, sorry, Marvin, for dragging this one out, but just want to say, because it's not really been touched on really, is the gambling policy. Personally, I'm not against gambling, but I just think the advertising around it's got completely out of hand. And obviously, we're only talking about a very small part of the adverts that people actually see in their lives, because obviously we don't control Facebook or what's on national TV or whatever. But I just think it's very important that we set an example, because it is a very damaging activity. There's a lot of problem gamblers out there, and it is growing. And there's been news reports recently about people who are bored in lockdown, gambling more at home and things like that. So I think it's very, and not just men, it's affecting women increasingly as well these days as well. So I think it's very important that we've adopted this gambling policy, and it'd be good to see other sort of institutions in the city doing the same thing as well.
Thanks, Kai. So it was Helen next, wasn't it?
Yeah. Thanks, Marvin, and I'll be very brief. And it's really with my Health and Wellbeing Board chair hat on that I think there's an expression, isn't there, that pursuit of the perfect sometimes stops you achieving the good. And so to have this policy as an outward and visible sign of ways of tying together some of our other policies. So we can't have one city plan ambitions around healthy eating, gambling, as Kai's just said, issues that impinge on people's mental health, without finding every way that we possibly can to implement those. And I also think that actually we might see over a period of years that Bristol, as we know, is a city full of creatives, that actually creatives finding new ways to advertise good things will be, we can be a showcase for that too. So very much welcome this policy.
Afsal.
Thank you, Marvin. So I just want to say that I welcome this policy here in Easton, just like many other wards, in fact, places up and down the country. There is an obesity epidemic, so tackling that is part and parcel of this in terms of messaging and marketing. Kai's already picked up on the point around gambling, so I won't cover that, but just to say that that too is a massive issue, and it's affected people's emotional states as well, especially over the past years as people have been at home, and there's been a lot of online activity taking place, including gambling with credit cards. But I just want to say that as chair of the One City, as co-chair, I should say, of the One City Environmental Board, that we're actually fortunate because we are collaborative, just like all the boards are, working with the public sector, private sector, and third sector organisations, and especially the private sector. They do spend a lot of money on advertising, and it means that we can have those conversations with those businesses, and we can influence them and start coordinating an approach as to how they too can use their resources to help tackle the climate crisis. So really, that is what I wanted to say, just to reassure everyone that we are having those conversations, and we are able to reach out to businesses and how they more ethically and sustainably use their budgets and can help tackle climate crisis.
Thank you, Afsal. Thank you everyone for your comments, for statements and questions as well. I'm going to take the decision now, which will be displayed on the screen. And in taking this decision, I have taken into account the equalities relevance check, and I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Okay, so now we're on to agenda item 16, HR, recruitment, advertising and public notices supplier. Craig, you're bringing this one.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This paper seeks approval to commission a provider for HR recruitment advertising and public notices from the 5th of July 2021 for a period of 4 years using the ESPO framework. The new tender specification will also include a requirement to demonstrate a thorough understanding of diversity in recruitment advertising. This will support our work to attract and recruit candidates from all of our communities so that we have a workforce that reflects the city we serve at all levels of the organisation. All bidders must be able to display how they will deliver social value and meet the requirements of the Council's social value policy. Tenders will be evaluated based on 50% quality, 20% social value, and 30% on price. I'm pleased to bring this to Cabinet today.
Thank you, Craig. Again, really important area when you think it's about recruitment. I noticed when I was working in the NHS, what goes on in the workforce is one of the biggest determinants of the quality of service people receive. Snow White Peaks of the NHS report pointed this out. But we've had no statements or questions from any councillors on this item. Can I just offer it to any cabinet members who'd like to comment? Okay. So again, really important work being taken through. Let me hand back to you now, Craig, to take the decision, which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. I mean, there's a whole thing in there about wording using advertising and how that attracts or puts off people from applying for roles. It's really important that we get this right. Yeah. So in terms of the decision to be, in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Craig. So let's go on to agenda item 17. This one is with you as well. Social value policy review.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. The purpose of this paper is to update the Council's social value policy. Social value is about taking wider economic, social and environmental impacts into account when making decisions. The previous policy, introduced a few years ago, focused on procurement decisions, whereas this new policy sets out how consideration of social value should be expanded to other areas of council decision making, for example, grant allocations, investment decisions and regeneration programmes. Since we rolled out the first policy, it has secured over 12 million of social value commitments. It's allowed factors such as local employment and local spend to be taken into account as part of decision making, and produced a more consistent and robust framework for comparing social value offers from suppliers. As I said before, the key change in this iteration of the policy is to expand consideration of social value beyond procurement to other areas of council decision making. The priorities of this new policy are to help reduce poverty and inequality, increase the city's resilience and environmental sustainability, and enhance community, economic and social well-being. All in all, as we heard from Scrutiny earlier, this has been a great collaborative effort and continues to keep the council at the forefront of the use of social value in its decision making.
Thank you, Craig. So we've had one public forum question on this, and it's from Councillor Negus. So I'm going to invite Councillor Negus to join the room. Councillor Negus. Councillor Negus, would you like to ask your question? You're on mute, unfortunately. Councillor Negus, can you hear me? Yeah, I think shall we
Can we reconnect him? We don't have any other questions, so we can't go and come back, but let's try and admit him again. It says joining. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I think we might be getting a connection. Here we go. Councillor Negus.
I'm here now. Thank you.
There you go. Second time lucky. Okay.
For doing that.
I'd like to ask you a question.
My question was about basically taking this seriously. I applaud the fact that we've now at last got the policy we have, but I'm very keen to make sure that we use it properly and refer to it at every opportunity. And I've given you two examples of where I think we need to do better on this and make this really valuable. So can you answer the points I've made in my question about how we improve it?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I mean, the purpose of the policy is not to define the details of exactly how every individual decision will be made. The purpose is to set out the Council's aims and principles when we're developing ways of incorporating social value into different decision-making frameworks. Two of those key aims are to support Bristol becoming a more ecologically resilient and biodiverse city and promote the mental and physical health and well-being of local people, which I think are the two sort of areas you raised. It's important that we continue to make decisions in a fair and transparent way. With respect to social value, this requires us to be able to compare very different kinds of economic, environmental and social benefits in a consistent way. This policy proposes to do that using an appropriate combination of robust financial proxy values and clearly defined qualitative criteria. One of the policy's aims is to promote the mental and physical health and well-being of local people. And in addition, the policy advocates community engagement and co-design when designing social value into decision frameworks. This would be in addition to existing service user choice. So absolutely, we need to make sure we embed it. Obviously, this has been quite a journey. Three or so years ago, Steve Clark set up a task and finish scrutiny group to look at this, and we worked together to come up with the original policy, which is now three-ish years in. This is again a refresh, which was written by Scrutiny really, and we worked with Scrutiny to come up with the final, cross the I's and cross the T's and dot the I's. So we're happy to continue to do that.
Well, thank you for that. I'm pleased to hear that it is going to be embedded, and that's really what the point of my raising this point. It is so important. But if it's to be embedded, and it's the same as many of the other appendices and the reports that we should have attached to cabinet decisions, is it going to be there to be something which is attested against when we bring certain decisions? It's so important that we can't just say we've got a social value policy. We've actually got to use it as a tool to make sure we're making the right decisions, because very often those decisions are choices, and the choice should come down ultimately to well-being and social value.
So in terms of the existing policy, we have used it consistently throughout our procurement processes for a couple of years now, and as I mentioned earlier, it's delivered quite a significant amount of benefit to Bristol already. In terms of what we do with this one, I mean, I guess there's an element that now it will be up to the next administration, I suppose, but if that is us, then I don't see why we wouldn't include it in our kind of checklists that we work through in cabinet decision papers and decision pathway paperwork. So I have no objection to doing that.
I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Negus?
I said so, Marvin. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there's nothing, no other questions or statements on this item. Any other cabinet members wish to comment? Asha?
Yeah, the policy was brought to my briefing, and obviously social value is very close to my heart. And we know that the Bristol's purchasing power, I think there's a lot that has been said about how we spend our money and the benefits that are derived from the straight and straight commissioning and procurement. And I just welcome the fact that we are now kind of expanding the policy, and it will really enable us to foster more local employment, promote fair pay, encourage local business growth, and support the community priorities that are coming out through the work that we have just done around COVID recovery, particularly for communities, voluntary community and social enterprise sector. So I really do welcome this policy, which will, we are just going to be building on the work that we've already done. And as Craig has just said, we'll just add it to whichever administration should add social value within the framework when we look at decisions that as part of the decision-making process. Thanks.
Thank you, Asha. Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Craig, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. I probably should have also said that not only has this work been largely done by scrutiny, and it's been a really effective use of the task and finish group, but this also works with the Federation of Small Businesses, VOSCA, the University of Bristol's procurement department, and so on. So it's been a really, really good collaborative piece of work. Sorry, I just found my decision text. So in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment reform in the report, and in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. Craig, you're on a hat trick here. Agenda item 18, building practice capital program budget, allocation 21-22.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. This paper covers a request to spend 1.5 million on essential repairs and maintenance works across the corporate estate. The works are required to fulfil statutory obligations, to prevent litigation from statutory bodies, to ensure acceptable health and safety standards, and also to ensure a continued operation of the estate. The formulation of the programme has been based on condition survey data for the estate, as well as site inspections by senior building surveyors. The corporate strategy recognises the positive health effects of good quality and a well-maintained built environment, including providing effective support for good quality learning, as well as ensuring sites are safe and fit for purpose. The programme will ensure these sites included are safe and able to continue operating. And this is fixing roofs in schools, in libraries, and so on. It's one of those day job things. It doesn't sound very exciting, but without which the experience of Bristol residents of Bristol City Council services will be much worse. I'm pleased to recommend it.
Thank you, Craig. No public forum statements or questions on this item. Cabinet members? Okay, all about the hard yards here, getting stuff done that needs to happen, the headlines. But thank you, Craig. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities relevance check in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 19, integrated transport block and highways maintenance funding allocations 21-22. Kai, you're bringing this item?
Thanks, Marvin. Yeah, this is a report that deals with an element of transport funding that we get within Bristol City Council. Transport funding is normally quite complicated because there's different pots of money involved, from government grants to WECA grants to locally raised revenue. So it's quite a complicated picture, but this is kind of a slice of the cake in terms of what this paper is dealing with. So it's the integrated transport block and highways maintenance funding for 2021. So that's broken down to £3.1 million for highways capital maintenance, 2.743 million from the integrated block, and then 652,000 incentive funding. So as I said, this is just a slice of the cake that we get in transport from some particular pots of money. What that's actually funding though is I've got a list of some of the things it's funding. It's the relocation of the family cycling centre up to Lawrence Weston. It's money around the Metro bus project. It's money around cycle hangers and increased cycle hangers around the city. It's our money and funding to do the school streets programme and general run-of-the-mill things like signposts, street lighting, and signals, things like that. So it's obviously a lot of the routine stuff, but some important stuff as well. That supports the funding from this paper. So another important one, but it's only a part of the picture. So happy for the Cabinet to approve this.
Thank you, Guy. I must say I'm personally very pleased to hear about the cycle hangers rolling out. It's a big part of the.
Yeah, I think we're all getting some emails on that, but we do have like a budget line for cycle hangers, and we'll look to do more where we can.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, we've had no public forum statements or questions, nothing from councillors. Any other Cabinet members like to comment on this item?
Just to say, I too welcome the cycle hangers.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine Afsal would be just around East Nicola, around St George and fish ponds. Yeah, this is going to be a very popular intervention, I'm sure, coming through.
Absolutely, Marv. So I just go and say that this is something that myself and Ruth have been looking into for quite a while now, and we've come up with a number of spots that, having spoken to the local residents and designated particular areas where we'd like to actually see the installation. But absolutely, especially in such close proximity to the railway path, looking forward to this actually. So thank you so much, Kai, and thank you to the officers.
Great. Okay, so let me hand back to you now, Kai, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment in the report. And in terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Okay, so thank you very much, Kai. So on to agenda item 20, and Helen, you're going to enjoy this. Youth zones, progress to the outline business case and funding. We lost Helen. We lost Helen. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll change the order and we'll come back to agenda item 20.
Yeah, Helen's just texted to say she's just been kicked out of the meeting, so she's trying to get back in.
Ah, okay. We'll go to 22. So we're going to go to item 22, enhanced substance misuse support and treatment services funding. This with you, Asha.
It is. Thank you. Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting that. So let me just get up my notes. So okay. So this report that is coming forward to you today, as you know, Bristol is has one of the highest levels of problem substance misuse amongst the core cities. We have over 2,000 people in Bristol that access Bristol's commissioned drug and alcohol services, and we see a number of significant admissions into the BRI and Southmead Hospital due to primary or secondary conditions. Public Health England have provided evidence that show us that for every £1 spent on drug treatment, it results in a £2.50 benefit to society in terms of further health and criminal activity. And so what we have here today is that the government has provided an additional tranche of funding. It's expected to be around £1 million for enhanced substance misuse support and treatment services. And they've also identified Bristol to be an accelerator site. So hence why the amount of money that we've had. So really this report is being brought to you today to approve the acceptance of that funding once that comes through to enhance our drug treatment services.
Thank you, Actually, we've had no statements or questions on this item. Real, obviously, a key area of challenge for Bristol. Can I ask any Cabinet members if they'd like to comment on this item? Okay. Well, I just say thank you for the work as ever, Asha, driving through. Let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will be displayed on the screen.
Okay. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I would approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. So let's go back to Craig now. So we still don't have Helen with us, do we? So let's go back to Craig for agenda item 23, Bristol Holding Group business plans. So this item does contain exempt appendices, and Cabinet members are reminded to indicate if they wish to discuss any information in the exempt session, in which case we'll move into exempt session. Craig, can you introduce this report?
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the annual business plans for 2021-2022 in respect of Bristol Holding Limited, Goram Homes Limited and Bristol Waste Company Limited. These are the council's established and fully operational trading companies. The business plan set out the key ambitions and objectives of the companies over the coming year and provide the framework by which the council, via its holding company, Bristol Holding, can monitor the company's performance. Highlights from the business plans for 21-22 include Bristol Holding's plan, which sets out its focus on its own consolidation and growth and the growth of its subsidiaries by supporting them in identifying and developing business opportunities. Bristol Holding remains committed to providing its core role of scrutiny, assurance and operational oversight in respect of its subsidiaries. For transparency and completeness, I note that since the completion of the Bristol Holding business plan in early January, the shareholding arrangements for the City Leap joint venture have evolved, and it has now been agreed that this entity will be owned directly by the council. Bristol Holding is therefore no longer being considered as a potential shareholder of the entity as suggested in the business plan. I can confirm this does not represent a material change to Bristol Holding's business plan and has no financial or I can confirm this does not represent a material change to Bristol Holding's business plan, as no financial or group planning have been worked into the plan in respect of Bristol Holding's potential involvement. It should also be emphasised that any potential transfer of staff from the council to Bristol Heat Networks Limited, as referenced in the plan, would require agreement by the council, a separate cabinet decision, and any appropriate staff consultation processes in due course. Goram Homes business plan outlines their intended programme of projects for the next 5 years and how they aim to address environmental issues and provide social value and innovation through such projects. Bristol Waste's plan summarises the company's ambitions to continue to provide an excellent waste collection service and to support the council in delivering core projects such as the Big Tidy and Clean Streets. The plan usually sets out some of the challenges that the company and others in its sector face as a result of worsening recycling market and the challenges of COVID. Bristol Holding and the council will be working closely with the company over the coming year to mitigate these risks ahead of 2022-2023. Review process for business plans to Cabinet. Review process for business plans to Cabinet considers the business plans for approval annually. The business plans are generally prepared on the basis of information available to the companies in September 2020 when the first drafts are prepared. As is the case every year, the business plans were developed by the management teams of each company and have gone through a rigorous review process before being presented to Cabinet. This process includes several iterative reviews by our own group holding company, with valued input from their experienced non-exec directors. Bristol Holding's summary of this business plans is included in the Cabinet report appendices, and the holding company has recommended each business plan for approval by the shareholder, subject to certain comments which have been taken into account as the business plans have been finalised. The review process also includes a detailed consideration of the plans by the group established to support the council in its role as shareholder, the shareholder group. The shareholder group includes myself, Councillor Shah, the Chair of Osm as an observer, several senior officers of the council and an independent advisor with significant commercial experience. It should be noted that shareholder group provided constructive feedback to the companies when it met to consider the business plans, including in particular requests for additional financial information to be considered and included. The business plans have been revised to include the information requested, and this process has been tracked at regular briefing sessions over recent months. The business plans have also been considered by Osm. Finally, you may be aware that the Cabinet report on Bristol Holding Group business plans was originally scheduled to come to Cabinet in January 2021. However, due to an update to Goram Homes' business plan and taking into account the recommendation from the Grant Thornton Value for Money report that business plans should be based on timely information, the decision was taken to defer the business plans to enable Cabinet to make a well-informed decision. The updated Goram Homes business plan was reviewed again by the boards of Goram Homes and Bristol Holding, the shareholder group and Osm in February and March before being submitted for approval to Cabinet today.
Thank you very much, Craig. So we've received two statements from Jerome Thomas and Tom Merchant, who are not present, and two questions from Susan Audrey, who is also not attending, but she will receive a written response. So we'll make a note of those. Any Cabinet members wish to comment this item? Okay, so again, incredibly comprehensive piece of work. Thank you, Craig, for just toiling away in these areas of real critical importance. And let me hand back to you now to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
In making this decision, I've taken into consideration the consultation responses and equalities impact relevance check in the report. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, so let's come back now to Helen. Helen, were you messing about with your iPad or laptop there that you?
Believe me, after the length of this meeting, I did not want to lose internet at the point where I was going to talk.
All right. So agenda item 20, Youth Zone, progress on outline business case and funding, Helen.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marvin. Yeah, I'm really genuinely thrilled and excited actually to bring this paper to Cabinet. This is the culmination of a great deal of hard work and collaboration between Bristol City Council and Onside that takes a significant step closer to the South Bristol Youth Zone, which will be the first of its kind in the Southwest. And I just want to put my thanks on record to some of our officers that have been involved in the project team to make this happen. So that's Gail Rogers, Anne James, Paige Williams from the Mayor's Office, and also Sam Marsh, who have been integral to getting this project to this point. On-site youth zones exist all over the country, and they are essentially large purpose-built hubs for children between the ages of 8 and young people up to 25 to play, eat, learn, dance, dream, exercise and have fun. Each centre is co-designed with young people from the area and will incorporate the spaces for the activities and the facilities that they want to see. So they will design the space. The South Bristol Youth Zone will cost in the region of £8.2 million. Half of which will be funded by Bristol City Council, and the remaining funding will come through Onside and their network of philanthropic and grant funders. We're also hoping that there might be some central government funding available through the Youth Investment Fund, which is managed by the Department of Culture, Media and Sports, and that would help to mitigate the city's contribution to the capital. Once built, the youth zone will continue to be part funded, around 30% by Bristol City Council, and the charity that will operate the youth zone will fundraise for the remaining revenue. The next phase after today, if the decision is taken, of this really exciting development for young people is to confirm the site for the youth zone. And we're working through some potential options and hope to announce the site in the coming weeks. And we'll return to Cabinet with a full business case and a consultation in due course. Onside have begun to work with other youth organisations and providers in Bristol to talk to them about the project and to ensure Bristol's youth sector is engaged and involved. We're also keen to encourage Onside to work with employers and educators in South Bristol to build strong links to make sure that this youth zone plays its role in preparing young people for education and employment, and that our employers are committed to seeing the centre thrive. In the coming weeks and months, Onside will begin working with children across South Bristol to co-design and discuss some of the features of the South Bristol Youth Zone, which will include its name. So for now, it's the South Bristol Youth Zone, but it will have another name. And this is all in the spirit of the fact that this is going to be their space. I really hope that Cabinet will support this paper. For too long, we've talked about the inequalities in opportunity, attainment and resources in South Bristol. And it's my sincere wish that our investment in a multi-million-pound project will be part of a series of measures that give young people in the south of the city the sense that they are heard, that they are valued, and that their future here in Bristol is bright. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. So we've had no statements or questions on this item from any councillors, but can I offer to the Cabinet I knew you'd be in there, Helen. Big news for South Bristol, Helen.
I know, I'm sorry to lengthen the meeting.
No, it's great. It's great.
Honestly, this is just such a fantastic report and such a fantastic opportunity. So I want to thank Helen and the officers. And, you know, when we went up to see one of the youth zones in Manchester, pre-pandemic, seems a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? I must admit, I was prepared to be skeptical about what we saw, but actually it was a really, really very, very positive visit and a great endorsement of the work that Onside does. And I think the thing for me is that, and we all understand the reasons why, but the contracts for youth work in the last few years have meant that we've lost some of that open access work. And the great thing about this is that all young people, right down to 8, I think it is, isn't it, will be able to access the centre. And it's the links that we'll be able to make with the college, with the South Bristol Skills Academy, the new Construction Skills Academy, Bottle Yard, all of those other organisations, Norwest Media Centre, HWV, all of those will be able to link in. And I think creating something where all those providers will be able to deliver both from the building and coordinate what goes on in other spaces. And it's just amazing that this is coming to South Bristol after we've been kind of left out in the cold for quite a long time. So of course I welcome it.
Great. Any other cabinet members like to comment on this item? Is that a hand, Craig?
Yeah, can I just, only that, so I'd reiterate Helen's thanks to the various officers, but also thanks to Helen Godwin, because this, you know, this is happening because of her sort of endless drive and making sure that things happen, and just, you know, constant nagging. It's great.
Do we want to say nagging?
Probably not, no, but, you know, pushing.
Slip of the tongue. Struggling for the word. Listen, I'll just say a couple of things, but one is about the quality of the offer that's going to come through here. As a young person, I remember it talks about bringing top class facilities to young people. When Dennis Stinchcombe brought Broad Plain down to the edge of the M32, and we went in there as kids, and it was a good quality snooker table tennis bats actually had rubber on them on both sides. There was football facilities. It meant that we went and we were there 4 nights a week, 2.5 hours, lining up, you know, 30 minutes before the doors open, you know, walking home covered in sweat because we've been running around exhausted. You know, giving our young people top class facilities is so important. It's a sign of respect and we have for them, and then the self-respect that they then have as well. So it's something I'm really looking forward to. But it also speaks to a deeper challenge that you've been taking on, Helen, since you have come in, and that the reality is that the way youth services have landed in Bristol, subject to contracts, have not necessarily landed equally and not serviced the needs of all young people across Bristol. And that's been a real shame. And I'm lobbied myself by organisations saying that some of the hardest to reach, the highest needs young people have been basically left out in the cold. So it's really important that again this investment comes through and we really get our heads around this and begin to tackle some of those inequalities for our youth provision. So let me hand back to you now, Helen, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Marvin. Okay, so sorry. In terms of, in making this decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact relevance check in the report. And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much. So let's do your next item now. Agenda item 21, Troubled Families Data Accelerator bid.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the National Troubled Families team sits within MHCLG, and it's a government programme, but it's delivered locally and it's essentially to support families in need. Bristol's been really successful in its work on the Troubled Families programme, and I think that's in part because of our unrepentant commitment to early intervention and prevention. So we are committed and have continued to be committed even though the funding sometimes isn't there, to working with families from the earliest possible stage, enabling them to stay together safely wherever possible. We've also been recognised as an innovator and a leader for our work around data analytics, and that's been driven by Gary Davis in the Children and Families team. We've been recognised to the point of winning awards for that work. So using data analytics in a methodical but ethical way enables us to work closely with families who are most likely to need our support and that of other statutory partners, and also to do the preventative work where that's also the case. So the government is now seeking to fund between 7 and 10 consortia across the country, and they will lead and develop work around data sharing, improving data management systems, ethics, and using data to improve operational and commissioning systems. Bristol's in a really strong position to lead such a consortium, and we're hoping to do that across the Avon and Somerset policing area. So we'll be working alongside South Gloss, Baines, North Somerset and Somerset. And it's also hoped that the police and health partners will join this work. And if that happens, that will be really significant, because when we talk about data analytics, one of the sort of strands of work that's often really missing from that is health data. So just trying to understand the whole experience that families have, it's very difficult to do that without health involvement. So that is a really significant step. So this paper is a kind of very early step on the process. So it's essentially a paper to ask for permission to develop a collaborative bid across the region that then we will hopefully put forward to government, and hopefully I can come back again and talk about that in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. So we've had no public statements, councillor statements or questions on this item. Can I ask any cabinet members if they wanted to comment on this item? No? Yeah, just say another area of critical importance to us that we are have been grappling with since we first came in. But let me hand back to you now, Helen, to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on the screen.
I'm off mute, sorry. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendation as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Helen, and again, for your sterling work in the area. So the next item is agenda item 24. This is with me, and it's the Bristol Beacon Phase 2, and I'm going to chunk this up into sections. There's a lot of fair amount of noise, so let's break down what's going on here. First off, the item contains exempt appendices, and can I just ask cabinet members to indicate if they wish to discuss any information in an exempt session, in which case we'll move into exempt session. Okay, so first off, let's talk about the significance of Bristol Beacon, formerly Colston Hall. We know it's an iconic listed venue, listed as a concert venue in the middle of the city. Assessments, judgments made on it says that it would generate, after a renovation, 253.7, may as well 254 million pounds of GVA, and a further 9.6 million generated in the wider southwest area in the 20 years after reopening. We know it has incredible cultural value as a cultural venue, but also it's part of the city's identity. And as we look at the future of our city centres and our high streets, we know we are going to have destination venues. It will not just be retail that draw people in, with the changing nature of retail and high streets. So Colston Hall, Bristol Beacon, as it is now, will be a destination helping us draw footfall to the middle of the city. So we recognise its significance. Move on now to May 2016, when we came in, and this was one of the first items brought to me after the election. I think within a week, certainly within 2 weeks of me coming into office, which also suggests that decisions were there hanging around before the election, because it did not simply conjure itself up within the days after my election. And this is what we were brought. We had a 150-year-old building that had been allowed to fall into a state of disrepair. No work, no significant work had been done on that building for 60 years. 150-year-old building, no significant work for 60 years. Someone did build an extension on the edge of the building, cost of over £20 million, but put the extension on, and a very nice looking extension, but without tackling the substance of the main building, as it were. And then following the extension being added on, which again, we all think is a nice extension, there's a gap from then up to when we come into office and are faced with a decision. So there's a gap in the planning for how we're going to roll out, making sure that this concert venue is world-class and safe. We faced a decision right then. This is what we are presented with. One, start the journey of renovating the building, Colston Hall as it was then, which means that you're on a journey that will begin to incur costs because it's renovating a listed building and that's been in a state of disrepair. Or two, we could as a city have said, no, we're not going to go down that journey. But then there are some very real consequences for that, reputational and financial. The building would have to close because it couldn't go on as it was. We were warned that bits of masonry could fall off the ceiling and hit audience members, so it could not actually be used. We lose a city asset in that sense. We lose a destination venue, a contribution to the culture, part of the city's brand. But also a number sums of money had been attached both to Bristol Music Trust to operate, but also to the prospect of the regeneration out of the building itself, that if we hadn't gone ahead, we'd have then had to start paying back. So you can see the context. Do you start this journey or do you not? Do you want to start this journey or do you not? So we committed to the renovation for all those reasons I've shared. Having started it, I think the best image, and I'm going to steal this from a reporter on Radio Bristol, was the best way of describing this now is like taking your car for an MOT. And you got a sense, you know what you know, but you don't really know how expensive it is until someone's lifted up the bonnet. But there's some complexity to this image that adds on to Bristol Beacon. First off, this isn't a modern car. This is a classic car. It's an old classic car. And we are just the latest in a long line of owners of this vehicle. Secondly, it hasn't been serviced for 60 years. So we're the ones who are taking it in for the MOT, but all the maintenance hasn't been done. And also, it's an old model that's no longer made and no one keeps the plans. So no one actually knows how it works. And that is actually a very good description of a Bristol Beacon. No plans, lots of things to discover about the building, allowed to fall into a state of disrepair over the years. So we go into this project, as we did, with the best knowledge possible of the job that lay before us, without having the opportunity, and because it wasn't there, because it was still being looked at, to really strip back the building, to lift up the bonnet and find out what was going on. Now, since the venue closed and Clark Wilmot have been in there and we have stripped back this building, what we've been able to discover are hollow pillars, Victorian fireplaces, Elizabethan wells, all sorts of complexity that surrounds this being a listed building with no drawings. What we've been discovering is that what was left us is not a 50-something million pound project, but it is a £100 million piece of work. And I want to be clear on here because there's some loose language. This is not spiraling costs. Spiraling costs talks about a situation in which someone says, I'm going to charge you £5 to screw that screw into the wall. And next year it's £10 to screw that screw into the wall. That's not what's happened here. What's happened is we discovered that the wall wasn't actually there. And so all sorts of additional work needs to be done around it. So it's a different project we are now facing. What we have discovered by stripping back on this building is that it is not a £50 million project, it is a £100 million project. And actually, as a city with lots of people in the construction sector, will hopefully understand this. If you bring someone in to build an extension on the house and say, well, we're not going to let you investigate the foundations of the existing building and we have no architectural drawings, no contractor is going to say, well, yeah, it's a £20,000 project. They're going to do some investigation and then come back with the project, but you're going to have to pay to go so far. And we've had to pay to get this far. And that's where we are. So having discovered all the complexity and around this building, we now face another set of challenges similar to the ones we faced at the beginning, go or no go, except this time there's 3 options. We can continue to completion of Bristol Beacon with all the benefits we recognise that brings for the city, cultural offer, city economy, and actually I would say direct employment as well. We could abandon the building, walk away from it, allow the current work, work that's going on it to peter out and leave it. We can mothball it, wrap it up in bubble wrap and leave it for a later occasion. Now, interestingly, the latter 2 options, stopping and mothballing, also incur costs that are actually higher than the costs of continuing with the work of renovating, regenerating this building. And that is the commitment I think we need to make today, is to continue with the Colston Hall. The discovery of the complexity of this project is one that we wish these complexities were not there, hiding in the fabric of this building. We wish that the servicing of the building had been undertaken over the last 60 years, but they were not. And as a result, we have this building and this challenge before us. So our job now is to make sure that the negotiations with Wilmot Dixon are clear and work for the people of Bristol, minimising the amount of risk we are exposed to. Wilmot Dixon have assured us that they have a genuine love for Bristol, want to work for the best interests of Bristol. We've taken them at that word, and we work out the negotiations with them on that basis, that we all want to work for the best of Bristol. But it is our commitment to make sure that in the face of this reality of the Bristol Beacon, that we get the best possible deal in the face of the challenge that we face. We do now have a detailed and resource plan that gives certainty, because of the scale of exposure the building has gone through, the stripping back, that gives certainty to the work, allows us to offer a high degree of certainty as to when the building will open its doors, providing musicians, artists and cultural organisations from Bristol and beyond a world-class venue to perform. We're bringing economic benefit profile and making sure we have a destination venue in the city centre when so many city centres are under such pressure. Huge part of our nighttime economy as well, I would put in there, which is work that Nicola's been working on. Okay, so we've had a public statement and a question. So we've actually had 3 public forum statements and 1 question. So I'm going to invite people into the room now. The first statement is from James Dury. James.
Hi, Marvin. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Thanks, James.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I wanted to just briefly talk to the statement that I've sent in, speaking on behalf of Business West, Chambers of Commerce and Initiative to this item. So thank you. We recognise as a business community the challenges that we face as a city and the council faces, particularly with the impact of COVID. We also know as a business community how important arts and culture offering is to the city's identity, its economy, and to its appeal as a place to live, work, visit, etc. And the important role it will play actually as we start to recover. Bristol Beacon, of course, sits right at the heart of this offering. And we know when the work's complete, it'll provide what we need is a world-class concert venue right in the heart of our city, run by the Bristol Music Trust, attracting performers from around the world and bringing in the kind of money, the investment, the jobs, but also something which through its direct activity and the Music Trust will touch all residents right across the city and indeed beyond. We know the building's, a 6-year-old building, and as a council an asset, has suffered from 60 years worth of a lack of maintenance, modernisation, and no serious investment other than clearly the entrance foyer some 12 years ago. Despite, I know, all the work that has been undertaken that you've been describing, led by the council officers and an external form of professional advisors, we know that clearly the size of the envelope now is increased very substantially to £106.9 million. Whilst this is a significant concern given the pressure on public finances, we do recognise there have been a number of factors which have led to this, including, as you've described, the condition of parts of the building and what's been discovered, and also the impact from COVID in terms of the delays and the complication that drives. Having considered those options, we don't, and look at the work that has been done to look at the options available. We conclude that not completing the work and all the consequences we request that the Cabinet basically proceed and get the job completed, but ensure fully that all the risks are properly recognised and understood and mitigated, and that lessons are learned for future projects of this type. So as a business community, we want to see the job completed for the Bristol Beacon, so that we have got this world-class facility in the centre of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And again, the perception, the sense of urgency of the business community, very welcome, really important contributors to our planning. Thank you very much. So we also have a statement from Councillor Anthony Negus, who will now rejoin the meeting. Councillor Negus, would you like to make your statement? I'll give you a minute.
Thank you, Marvin. I want to support the Colston Hall Bristol Beacon going ahead. I think it's far more important that we do that rather than stop it. But I also want to address, as you quite rightly say, loose language. We mustn't have any loose language. Of course, the bonnet should have been lifted on this building. It should have been lifted before the contract was let. There was a stripping out contract that should have been used to inform the contractor to get a good price. It wasn't done. It was done, it was ignored, and that's why we're in the situation we are now. In terms of drawings, I can send you the drawings of the buildings if you like. I have them of the original building, the Victorian building, and also the 1951 building. Quite extensive drawings, actually. I can send those to you, so you need to get that straight. The
Just
foyer,
10 seconds, Councillor Negus.
and I approve. The foyer was a Labour decision, and quite right too. We supported that and finished off with it. So basically, what we need is an inquiry. We've got to get to the bottom of this.
Anthony Negus,
that's
a minute now. Okay.
Instead of blaming, we need to move forward and learn from this. Thank you.
I think learning would be great. So, Councillor Negus, did you actually know the pillars holding up the roof were hollow?
You would have found that out if you'd done the stripping out at the right time.
Oh, but you said you had the drawings.
The contractor.
Okay, I just wondered if that was indicated in the drawings.
No, I don't know if it's indicated in the drawings. I've only just received them, but I've asked for them and I got them fairly quickly.
I'm just saying it's one of the big findings and one of the real complexities because they had to be filled in by hand. So if you knew they were hollow before we, and I think also one of the challenges is stripping out, depending on getting Bristol Music Trust out of the venue, and then obviously putting
you strip out after the building is empty.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, the stripping out would have actually found £100 million project, but I appreciate your contributions today. Let's talk outside of this meeting. Okay, thank you very much again.
It's important
for your contribution. Thank you. Okay, so we've had no other comments or questions. Can I ask if any other Cabinet members wish to speak on this item? No, okay. So, again, I think I go back to some of the items that Kai brought earlier on here, really. Issues of huge significance to the city that we will not allow to be kicked down the road and not addressed, whether it be harbour walls, be it our bridges. We begin to deal with them now rather than leaving for later administrations, generations to pick up the tab because we didn't intervene early. So we took hold of this. It'd be fantastic if the project was simpler, if we didn't have COVID and Brexit. Unfortunately, we do. We deal with the challenge that we have right in front of us. We take it on and we commit to building a world-class facility for Bristol and beginning to get the economic benefits that come from that and the job creation for Bristolians. So I'm now going to take the decision which will be displayed on the screen. And in taking this decision, I have taken account of the equalities impact assessment. I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Okay, so on to agenda item 25, grant determination for the Holiday Activities and Food Programme 2021. And Anna, this is with you.
Thanks, Marvin. Not sure I've ever been item 25 before, especially when there's still several more to go. But thanks for everyone's patience, particularly people if they're still watching at home. So this is got the heading at the Holiday Activities Food Programme. And I think all of us have seen the headlines during the pandemic about the scandal really around the way free school meals for young people were very poorly funded and haphazardly funded over and over again last school year, and to some extent into this year. So we're really referring to where children are entitled to a school meal during the day, normally at school, but that obviously does not apply during school holidays normally. But because of the way so many families were hard hit, many people, including the most high profile, Marcus Rashford, campaigned very strongly for those young people to ensure that, for the government to ensure those young people were still fed and well fed and provided for during their school holidays. So that applied to Easter originally last year, the May half term, the summer holiday, and then on from there. And we saw U-turn after U-turn and lobbying after lobbying, including a lot from Bristol City Council, in order to move some of those very important U-turns. And although, of course, we're always grateful for this funding coming forward, and particularly, I think, for the shift perhaps in public and government opinion on this, it has left a number of families across the country very vulnerable. Fortunately, less so in Bristol because we have such a good network of providers. And I just want to particularly name Feeding Bristol, a charity that we've been so proud to be part of and associated with as a council, and our amazing trustees and very small employed team there who have just worked tirelessly, in particular with Fair Share, to get food out to families that are particularly vulnerable. So this is now a government funded scheme. It's coming in as a kind of emergency quick cabinet paper because we want to accept it so that the funding is in place for the upcoming Easter holidays in a few weeks, where we'll be using Feeding Bristol's network to provide food out for families. It won't be through vouchers, but through sort of food packages. And from then on, there will be an opportunity for different organisations to also bid in, even if they're not currently involved in the summer and Christmas holidays. What we have found in the past, because you'll be aware, Marvin, that this isn't something we've only done during the pandemic, but we've delivered this for a number of years now in Bristol, is that it's far better to deliver food through activities rather than simply parcels out to families, or indeed something which, no offence to anyone, but has a council scheme branding on it. We have found that working through sports groups, drama groups like Unique Voice, many of our partners across the city, we've had a much more attractive offer for families to send their children to and to be looked after and supported, and with some wraparound care, as well as being having a free meal for them at that time. So there's very little further explanation or persuasion, I'm sure, that the Cabinet need to accept this money to enable us to provide food for young people over the Easter coming up and then the following year. But I suppose I've just been thinking and reflecting during this meeting, listening to Helen talking about the youth zone, listening to Helen Holland's piece on resettlement, that these items that maybe come with no public questions, with no councillor statements, we need to remind ourselves that that's really what we judge ourselves on, more importantly than what perhaps anything that comes in publicly or from councillors. And I think that something we always try and have thought about as an administration is how important it is to judge yourself by how well you treat the most vulnerable in our city. And I think we'd be hard pushed to find many more vulnerable people than our young people who have been living in extreme poverty in some cases for the last year and really need to have the basic right to food over the holidays that are coming up. So it's a ask for Cabinet to accept the government funding of just over 1.8 million to enable us to deliver this over the sort of long school holidays. That's it, sort of Easter, Christmas, summer holidays over the coming year.
Thank you, Anna. No public forum, statements or questions from anything, but can I offer this to any councillors wish to comment? Helen?
Yeah, I mean, just to come in, I mean, I don't have anything sort of different to say to what Anna said really, but I do think, oh gosh, we talk about this all the time, don't we? But, you know, some of the things we've talked about today are really hopeful and positive things and things that will make a real difference to people's lives. And it is a real shame that we don't get to talk about them for longer through questions and statements and stuff. But I mean, this work, I think, you know, as Anna said, you know, people like Marcus Rashford and some of the other campaigners have really raised awareness about holiday hunger. But I think, you know, it's worth saying that we've been talking about this for a really long time in Bristol, and obviously Feeding Bristol have done a huge amount of work in terms of raising awareness and raising money and making this happen. But I also think, you know, we need to pay tribute to the adventure playgrounds, the small sports organisations that make holiday events happen and provide the kids with a packed lunch. I think, you know, the work that both the Bristol Sport Community guys and Bristol Rovers Community Trust do in this space, you know, they kind of join together. Sometimes I think unknowingly, just because they love our kids and they know that there are so many kids that need a bit of extra help and support. So it's great to see that this is funded, and it's great to see that we can get even more coordinated about it. But I just think it's the time to sort of, you know, thank the city and remember that they've been doing this for a very long time, really, as well.
Thank you, Helen. Any other Cabinet members like to comment on this item? I mean, I'll just back that, Anna. It was a commitment we made in 16, wasn't it, to really tackle child hunger within the city. Lots of work then started to look at the kind of whole infrastructure around getting food out to children. I just, hats off to you, Anna, for taking that lead. You know, Kerry McCarthy's been key on this. And then we think about those people in the city, and this is always dangerous because you mentioned people, you miss people out. But people like Andy Street, I know Dana Dozy, Bristol Flyers captain. I'm going to go for the sports clubs here, but Dana Dozy, Bristol Flyers, got involved recently with Andy. I think of James Edwards coming out of Bristol City Foundation. Adam Tutton coming out of Ravers is going to do both clubs there. What's been amazing is to see that whole range of organisations coming forward saying, you know, we'll commit to tackling child hunger, and then how that structure then also not only you know, begin to bleed, as you said, Helen, into the lobby last Easter to get holiday hunger tackled, but also fed into our wider structure to tackle that we then adapted to COVID and the wider challenges around food and COVID as well. And I think it's been an incredible city. And I just also to say thank you to our business community, because when last time government did not support us with any money during that competitive process, business community had a meeting over at Burgess Salmon. I went over and we put some money in the pot, but the business community came up with another £100,000 saying we're not okay to be a city in which our children are in food poverty, and stepped up, and we saw those meals going out over those summer holidays. So I think it's a real sort, again, just like the, you know, being a home for people seeking refuge, it's a real source of pride that we just made this statement and made it happen. You know, all those people. So let me hand back to you now, Anna, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to echo that, I mean, Andy Street has just led you know, our charity so brilliantly. Like the trustees that I've met and been able to be part of at Feeding Bristol are genuinely some of the finest people I've got to know in Bristol. Really, as you say, Marvin, when the money isn't there from government, just find a way of doing it anyway, so that all those things are in place. So in making the decision, I've taken into consideration the equalities impact assessment in the report, and in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Anna. So this is agenda item 27. And this is with me, this is an investment in Bristol's leisure centres facilities. So our leisure centres are about partnership, and it takes both public investment to keep our centres open, to modernise and expand them. They bring in revenue, so we can utilise that to partner with private sector operators, which again helps to make them sustainable. And we stressed from the beginning, someone said that it's the most pro-sport administration the city's ever known. I think it might have been one of us that said that, actually, Kai. But it is, we recognise the importance of physical activity, both for physical health, but for the socialising, for the mental, emotional health as well. And we've worked with our sports communities to really try to create opportunities for young people and older people to be physically active. So this is a huge part of making sure we have the physical stuff in place that enables that. But with the growing competition, certainly from private leisure centres, it's right that we set out our direction of channel of travel, that public investment needs to be driven by geographical need, and particularly by social need as well, to help us tackle those inequalities of opportunity that also find their way into sport, sadly, and physical activity. And that's why this policy sets out a future intent to bring public investment to leisure centres in places of need and high deprivation. So our flagship leisure centres are Hengrove, Hallfield and Easton, all three of which serve demographic bases of areas that have higher levels of deprivation. They are well used and have opportunities for expansion and investment. And in addition, Bristol South and Henbury have good levels of use and crucially also support areas of deprivation, as I've been pointing out. So this paper takes us forward to develop a strategy for leisure centres, and we're going to look to invest in these centres and look at the future of other sites too, including the possibility of community-led leisure centres where there is support. The strategy is noted, and we will bring forward a future paper with a plan for investment and modernisation. So there are no public forum statements or questions on this item. Can I ask any cabinet members to comment, who wish to comment? Okay, Kai, I might have thought you might have flashed your sportsy credentials, but never mind, that's okay. No need to comment.
I'll save the time, I think.
So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask Cabinet to note the recommendations, which will now be displayed on the screen. There we go. So for those with a commitment to physical activity and sport, it's really good to just familiarise yourself with this. So let's move on to agenda item 26 now. This is with you, Asher. Government funding to implement the Domestic Abuse Bill.
Thanks very much, Marvin. So in February this year, Bristol City Council was advised by government that they were going to allocate a total of £1.79 million to the council to enable the city to deliver its duties in relation to the Domestic Abuse Bill, which is currently passing through Parliament. The Domestic Abuse Bill introduces important measures which will help to raise awareness of domestic abuse and will go some way to providing additional support to domestic abuse victims, whilst also helping to challenge perpetrators' behaviour. It's a positive step in the right direction. The bill sets out new statutory definition of domestic abuse and sets out responsibilities for local authorities, which include assessing need and commissioning support for victims and children in safe accommodation, having a local needs assessment and strategy, and appointing a multi-agency partnership board, which must include health, housing and education to oversee the delivery of the strategy and action plan. The legislation comes at a time when, even prior to the eventual long-term impact of COVID-19 pandemic, local government services are in huge demand, particularly children's services. So the allocation of 1.79 million, it's proposed that there will be a similar allocation each year for the next 2 years, and it will hopefully become part of the annual settlement for the local authority after this time. The Mayoral Commission, and we're going to hear shortly from Councillor Godwin, the Mayoral Commission on Domestic Abuse report, which we're going to talk about, sets out some key principles and recommendations for organisations across the city, from specialist services to businesses and employers, on how on the work that needs to be undertaken and to guide the decisions that we need to take on how we utilise domestic abuse funds. So I'm asking the Cabinet really to approve the acceptance of this allocated funding and authorise the Cabinet Member for Communities and Public Health and our Exec Director for People to spend the funding and take all the steps that we need to take to procure and award contracts to implement the expectations of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. So we've had no comments or questions on this item. Can I ask any Cabinet members if they'd like to speak?
No, I'll sort of put my comments in the next paper to save time, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Helen. Okay, so let me hand back to you then, Asha, to take the decision which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 28, Mayoral Commission on Domestic Abuse. And Helen, you're bringing this item.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. So this is just a report for noting, but we thought it was really important that we brought to Cabinet the report from the Mayoral Commission on Domestic Violence. A year ago, lockdown was still, well, we were days away from lockdown, and it was still an alien concept. But as we sort of understood what lockdown would mean, instinct told many of us that there were going to be a group of people in the city who would absolutely be vulnerable in their own homes. And we were right. The National Domestic Abuse Helpline reported an increase of 80% in calls after the first lockdown ended. And our local commissioned domestic violence partner, NextLink, saw a 30% increase in referrals. So we came together very early in the first lockdown to try and establish what our pathways were as a city. If there were people in the city that were afraid or coming to harm during that first lockdown, could we confidently tell them what their pathways that were available to them were? And whilst we've got a very strong system around domestic violence and abuse in the city, we weren't really secure in the knowledge that those pathways were as clear or as robust as we wanted them to be. So it was all a bit of a whirlwind, really. But Councillor Craig, myself, with the absolute guidance and ability of Jonathan Downey in the Mayor's office, came together, and we brought together key partners to try and get underneath how, as a partnership and as a city, we could reassure Bristolians that we could see them and that we were on their side during the lockdown and beyond, really, as well. So we wanted to utilise the One City approach because we knew that meant we could reach out to the right people very, very quickly. And obviously using the sort of power of Zoom and home working meant that we could bring together key thought leaders and key practitioners in the fields of domestic and sexual violence. So we had 80 people that attended a series of workshops across the summer, and those 80 people came from 28 key organisations. Our list of partners is really impressive. You can find it in the report, and it includes senior leaders from across health, the police, criminal justice, the voluntary sector, from Parliament, and also from specialist services, and importantly, victim survivors, all of whom contributed to the report that you have today. So the work focused on producing our key principles as a city by which we will design our services and our responses, as well as 35 key recommendations. Again, those are in the report. Now, these recommendations will now be, or should now be, reviewed and implemented by the key organisations across the city. This is not a piece of work that is solely for the council to take on. Some of the recommendations obviously involve the council. There's a good deal of recommendations around housing that we will need to take on, but a lot of them are for our wider partners across the city. So some of those will take longer than others, but we really do believe that we've got the commitment in the city to make the profound change that we need. So the recommendations include a focus on housing, on training, on working with businesses, on public information campaigns, on education, on perpetrator work, on recovery, and also ensuring our messaging and our services work for everybody. And that's everyone regardless of age, of gender, of disability, of race, of language, or of sexuality. Of course, asking organisations to do more without additional funding is really challenging, especially given the financial situation of all public services following the pandemic. However, as Councillor Craig has just set out, in the domestic violence bill does bring some funding, and our recommendations are well aligned. So hopefully that the timing on that is really strong, and it was really important for us to bring this report today at the same time as that news. But it is really important also to note that a number of the recommendations don't require huge financial resources. They require collaboration, they require time, partnership, person-centred thinking, and the joint commitment to make Bristol a safer city. So just coming to the end, I would really like to thank Councillor Craig and Jonathan Downing for their work on this project. And also I have to mention Jonathan's mum, Marie, who has been an absolute champion of this work, and I know is super proud of her son for it. As well as that, I also want to thank all the partners for their time, their commitment, and being willing to give us the opportunity to do something different. I also really want to mention Carol Metters, who is the recently retired CEO of Nextlink. And she gave us some real words of encouragement and hope and support, and it meant so much to me for her to say that, because she's been sat around these tables for 25, 30 years, no doubt hearing lots of iterations of we're going to do this differently, but she just still brought a real zing and a zest and a kind of belief in what we were trying to do, and it really sort of kept us going. So I really do look forward to seeing this work unfold, and hopefully bringing further items back to Cabinet that reflect the work that's been done across the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. And this is another piece of work that's a source of incredible pride for us. And I just say, looking at all the logos, I actually have the report here. I've got the draft in front of me. Looking at all the logos of the organisations that cooperated to do this, there's over 24 organisations here, and that's a genuine lineup across city organisations. Everything from, obviously ourselves to the police, University of Bristol, NHS, 125, Serona, Gallup, Nelson Trust, Womankind. Just what a fantastic collaboration, because tackling domestic violence is going to be a city issue. It's not just a criminal justice issue or local government issue, a city issue. We've had no statements or questions on this item, unfortunately. But can I offer it to Cabinet to comment on this? Asha?
Of course. So, yeah, it's kind of been a labour of love, to say. And I know domestic abuse is something that is serious, but I think what was really great about the work that we were doing, we're very purposeful in this administration. When we say we're going to do something, we kind of get it done. And so, when myself and Helen kind of set to work on this, the report that you have just held up is a testament to that kind of one city approach, that collaboration, the partnership that has evolved as a result of this work. So for me, I really just wanted, I too want to say thank you to all of the organisations who contributed to the work of the Commission. Big shout out to Helen and Jonathan and his mum. But it really is about what's going to happen next. And I have to say, without making any other announcements, it's been great that I was able to talk about the 1.7 million that we have. That will kind of really help give us some traction behind some of these recommendations. But really, what's going to happen next? We're delighted that we're going to be bringing the report to the One City gathering this Friday, and we're going to have an ask of the city because, as you said, it's the whole city pulling together, and so we want to make sure that all of our partners across the city are making some commitments to how they're going to help us address and pledge their support for addressing domestic abuse and violence. And already we've had a really phenomenal response from a big partner in the city who is going to help us with our campaign and communicate our message in terms of who we are as a city around domestic abuse. So yeah, we're going to take the report to all of the relevant committees, all of our partner organisations. They'll go to the city boards and we'll deliver an action plan that sets up quite clearly how things will unfold. And we'll continuously report back to the city and the council on our progress against those targets. So well done to everyone involved, and thank you, Marvin, for supporting Helen and I to do this piece of work.
Yeah, thank you both. Any other cabinet to speak? Anna?
Just to reiterate what a great piece of work this clearly is, and well done to everyone. And I don't know if you're aware, Asher and Helen, that Jonathan's mum is watching this live. So I've just heard that she's particularly going to be pleased to hear herself mentioned. I just thought I'd mention it her once more.
Full house. Anyone else for Marie?
Marie, hi Marie.
Thank you, Marie. No, it's amazing, and we just remember the context in which this happened. Early doors with the lockdown, we started discussing, didn't we, the additional likelihood of children for whom home was not the safest place coming to harm, but also violence in the home that is obviously, amongst adults, but has complete, implications for the children. And Anna, I remember you saying as well that the ability to contact people who were experiencing domestic violence will also be limited, because when children are not in school, often it's children in the school that is one of the ways in which we find out abuse is going on. So that early mobilization around what are we going to do as a city to tackle that was incredibly important, and getting together and pulling our city partners together, so important. So yeah, thank you. Okay, well, let me hand back to, well, actually, no, this is one where we are noting this report. So I'm going to ask Cabinet to note the recommendations, which will now be displayed on the screen. And very much looking forward to this being shared at the city gathering on Friday as well. So final item 29, 2021-22 Corporate Business Plan and Performance Framework. Craig, you're bringing this one.
Yeah, thanks, Marvin. It's the last one, and it's only for noting, so I won't get carried away with an introduction. The Corporate Strategy 2018 to 2023 sets out the Mayor's vision and our key priorities over the 5 years, including proposals for our revenue and capital budgets. Each year, we also publish a business plan. Our business plan 21-22 outlines the most important actions we need to take during this financial year, including actions we're taking to respond to the pandemic and to recover from its impact. The Performance Framework sets out the key performance indicators and demonstrates the impact on citizens. The measures are organised under the relevant strategic themes and key commitments, and quarterly performance reports are produced every 3 months where data is available to show progress throughout the year. A workshop was held with Scrutiny as well, which was mentioned earlier, and the challenge they provided has helped improve this updated plan for the coming years. There's a report just for noting, and I'm pleased to recommend it to Cabinet today.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. We've had no statements or questions. Cabinet members? Okay, quick one is, so I'm just going to ask Cabinet to note the recommendations, which will now be displayed on the screen. Okay, so that's the end of today's Cabinet meeting. Date of next Cabinet is Tuesday, the 13th of April, 2021 at 4 p.m. I'm just going to take a minute. I must admit, I'm incredibly frustrated at the end of this meeting. We have a number of great bits of work being brought through. We had questions, one question on Goram homes. We had a lot of interaction on our advertising and sponsorship strategy, but flood defence, homelessness, the resettlement scheme. We got a couple, youth zone for young people, troubled families, food poverty, domestic violence, nothing. And yeah, we've talked about democracy and participation and all the other forums and meetings that are wanted, but we've got to make use of the meetings we actually have in the schedule now. And I think it is really important that councillors, and dare I say candidates too, are engaging in some of the issues that, all these issues that are critical importance to people in Bristol. And just because they may not get a conflict or a spat and get a headline, it doesn't mean that they should be left just to pass through. We really need a step up in the level of political engagement among councillors in the city. The fact that we've got something coming through on domestic violence, which has been such a key issue during COVID, and there's not one comment on it, I think is unfortunate, to put it mildly. So I hope we do get that response. And I said before, I hope party group leaders will talk about this and talk to their members just about really getting involved in more issues. It's great to ask me questions and ask me what I'm doing. That's fine. But let's get involved in delivering on some of these issues of critical importance to the people of Bristol as well. Okay, everyone have a great week. The meeting of next Cabinet is Tuesday, 13th of April at 4 p.m.